Waiting for the credits to roll. Good afternoon, and welcome to the March 8th special meeting of the General Plan Advisory Committee. Let the record reflect that we have a quorum, and the meeting is called to order. And if you would all please join us in a moment of silence. Yeah. Thank you very much, and if you'll rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, great. This is a period that's set aside for announcements for members of the GPAC. Are there any announcements this afternoon? Seeing none, then, we will move right on to, we have no presentations today, so we'll move right on to public comment. This is the time for anyone to comment on anything they would like, so please come forward. We'd love to hear from you. You don't have to raise your hand. Just come up to the microphone, give us your name, and go for it.
Okay. Happy Women's Day, everyone. My name is Cherise Hansen. I'm owner of Under the Sea Gallery. Some of you I've seen before, but I reside one of my shops at 833 Embarcadero. It is a lot that you guys are going to talk about today with C1 number 3. I sent you an email. I hope everybody had a chance to at least glance over it. I think it's imperative before making a decision to think about all of the things. And I have been there for a long time. I've seen everything that people want to see there, and what I think you'd ultimately have to make the decision would not be what is best for the community and best fiscally for the town. So one of the things that they're going to talk about is having a new RFQ. One of the ideas is behind it is a hotel. This would be the most logical choice for it, even though they say conference center, et cetera, et cetera. The TOT would be the most producing for the city, but it also comes with costs. It would exclude locals from an area that has become profitable because it is an area for pedestrians and tourists to walk, to be a retail environment, and putting something of large-scale hotel proportions right in the center of the Embarcadero would truncate it and kind of offset it, and you'd feel weird when you walked through it. You feel like you were invading other people's spaces. But having something on the ground floor that would have retail, I think, and all public serving on ground floors would be the most acceptable use for this area. And that hotels upstairs would be the best use of land for getting the TOT and getting the 5% or 3% or whatever is in negotiations. Also, I'd want to state that a mass construction of this magnitude with a site and the Bluff property Marine Market Plaza would take multiple years. One of the things is that you have to decide on including that part into the RFQ. There is an existing RFP that I've been told some of you didn't even know that is actually still in not negotiations, but they're reviewing it, and it has a deadline of March 15th to have new documents entered. And so you allowing Market or the Area 7 to be included in the RFQ would completely abandon that and all the work that the three parties put into it, all of which were qualified applicants, would be just shut down. It's a very big choice that I didn't know was going to happen last Tuesday. But anyway, something of this magnitude would take 2 to 3 years in permit process and most likely 2 years to build. So if our economy is in flux right now and we need to have something built sooner, I believe something of taking a couple smaller units and get them to be built so at least we can have something up and running that's awesome and new near the vicinity of the center of Morro Bay, and then have another process being built over on the bluff side, etc. So if we need money, we need at least one source and using its highest potential in the area, and that is something that I would like to be a part of. Not to mention that this process is going to have lots of possibilities of fallout of developers. There's a lot of red tape and permit process dealing with coastal, there's the city to deal with as far as permits, but then there's also coastal. And this is going to be something that's going to take a long time before it actually comes in. So, and if any of you know me, I would get the project done. I am steadfast, tenacious, and I really want to see this completed. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Anyone?
Good evening. My name is Rick Deschler, Morro Bay resident. People have a tendency to add all kinds of creative bells and whistles to projects. It is easy to get carried away and lose track of the basic objectives of a project. I feel that is what has occurred with the Centennial Stairway project and Embarcadero improvements. My understanding is that for years we have wanted to do two things: connect the downtown to the Embarcadero and improve the flow of pedestrian and vehicular traffic on the waterfront. I feel that the current direction and drawings fail to do any of that. Don't let an out-of-control project interfere with your reasonable planning visions for this area. First, nothing in this project does anything to make a connection to the downtown and the Embarcadero. If anything, it reinforces the notion that the Embarcadero is the only place to go. Next, I don't see how creating a massive concrete entertainment plaza has anything to do with maintaining an historic fishing village image. The stairway and plantings are far more reflective of a rustic feel for a waterfront than any of the uninviting concrete designs presented. The way I see it, the city should be focusing on developing any entertainment venue above the bluff between Market and Main Streets. That will be the only thing that will create a connection between the two areas. People automatically gravitate to the waterfront. We don't need to try to create more congestion in that area by having everything occur on the waterfront. If we could get entertainment occurring above the bluffs, people will still migrate down to the waterfront before, during, or after the entertainment activities. That is the nature of the draw of any waterfront. Also, you really want to keep the noise and litter that occurs with massive events as far away from the bay and waterfront as possible. Waterfronts should hold the serenity of the environment of the bay and vessels moored or floating along the water. Those visuals don't need to be enhanced by musical performances and glitzy designs. A casual and rustic flavor is the best design to give Morro Bay a truly unique, historic fishing village experience to visitors. Keep the waterfront tranquil. Closing off Front Street in order to create this plaza will only hinder the flow of traffic on the waterfront. The same is true for changing the street end from parking to a plaza. We don't need to exacerbate the parking issues with the elimination of that parking. Eliminating parking on one side of the street will allow enough space for widening the sidewalks and maintaining two-way traffic and parking on one side. I hate to see any parking eliminated, but that is the only way sidewalks will ever be widened. The existing Centennial Stairway is truly attractive and functional. People love being on it. It is rustic and fits into the flavor of a fishing village. Please don't get caught up in trying to make this a Disneyland or an event expo. Focus on what a waterfront really is and should look like, as well as the things a waterfront should have or not have. Don't over-design something that is really simple. Just widen the sidewalks and be done with it. Just because the design has come this far doesn't mean it can't be fixed. Please be clear to council in your recommended uses to be included in the RFQ. Thank you.
At the end. Anyone else? Going. Okay, so with that, we'll close public comment, bring it back. Now would be the time for questions.
Excuse me. Rick, I just was curious when you were talking about putting an entertainment venue above the bluffs, where did you think that might go?
Well, there are some vacant properties up there, and we keep talking about public-private partnerships. It could be redevelopment of an existing structure that, just needs to be redeveloped. But I think that's a better, location for something of that nature. You don't want to over-impact the Embarcadero. Thank you.
Okay. And with that, we will move on to our business for today. There has been a request, and first we have the consent calendar, which consists of the approval of minutes from the meeting of January 19th. Are there any comments or corrections or suggestions with regard to that? If not, do we have a motion to approve the consent calendar? Second?
I'll second.
So we have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. So moving on to item C, new business. We actually have had a request to switch items number 2 and 3 because the RFQ discussion is a little more urgent, and there are people in the audience that are interested in that may not want to stay for the whole meeting. So we'll go with the status update, and then we'll discuss the RFQ, and then we'll go on to the waterfront strategic plan. So with that, I will turn it over to Michael Baker, International, Lorelei, and Amy.
Great. Good evening, everyone. Excuse me. So, next slide, please. Oh, a couple more slides. Great. Just give you an update on where we are at. We are continuing to work on the alternatives for the land use in the general plan and LCP update. And there will be a meeting with the Planning Commission and the City Council on March 28th. So if anyone would like to come and hear their input, that will be the next step on that part of the process. We are also getting started on the zoning code update part of the process. So actually next Thursday, the 16th, here at the GPAC, we'll be introducing that part of the project and also getting some initial feedback from the public and the members of the GPAC. And then finally, tonight we are presenting the public draft of the Downtown Waterfront Strategic Plan. And then after we receive input tonight, the next step will be to finalize that plan. And that will happen either this month or next month, depending on how far we get tonight. So with that, I will hand it off back to Chair Teft.
Okay. So moving on then to the Market Plaza RFQ. Is that yours, Lorelei, or that's yours? Okay. And Scott, maybe just for the benefit of the public and members that might not be familiar with the terminology, could you explain like the difference between an RFP and an RFQ?
Okay.
Thank you, Chair Tuft. Before we hop into it, we'll go over the difference between an RFP and an RFQ. An RFP is a request for proposal. So typically you have an idea or project in mind when you send that out to get bids back on it. And it would be for, an example would be for design of the Centennial Plaza, of our Parkway project. And if we hadn't already gone through at least conceptualizing that, you could go out for an RFP for that. Or you could go out for an RFP for the construction documents to build it. And so that's a specific project-related item. You send it out, you'll get folks that will propose on it. Oftentimes you'll add in a requirement that they seal bids that go inside of it for what the cost of it would be and those types of things. An RFQ is much simpler. It's a request for qualifications, so you're looking for folks out there that have done development similar to what you might be interested in. In the case of the Market Plaza, we'd be looking at an RFQ that sort of had, as far as we'd be looking for qualified applicants that have done development similar to the ideas that we have in our draft DWSP, specifically for Area 7 in that Opportunity Site 7. So hotels and markets and things like that could go there. And so we give an idea of the things that we want, and then probably at the end of it we have a sort of generalized statement that says we'd also be interested in any unique ideas that you might want to bring forward, because we don't want to necessarily discourage folks from applying. We want to sort of broaden the reach and the scope and the net out there to get as many people to come in to give us ideas as we can get. And so again, it's just a more generalized request for proposals.
And would this include only the DeStasio's property, or does it also include the Centennial Plaza?
So what we would be including in it would be here's the map. And so what we're calling Market Plaza, just so we don't keep calling it DeStasio's and the city's parking lot and other parking lot. So you see the area outlined in blue, that's what we sort of termed Market Plaza. That's the city's parking lot below, the property that the DeStasio's restaurant sits on, and then the property that's over here that was the parking lot that was originally associated with that, but which now is open for public use.
Scott,
Yeah, sure.
can you highlight the area, Ms. Hansen's property, or her location of her store?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So that's the RFP that we sent out was for development of the Off the Hook site. So that's right there. This is Libertine, Off the Hook. You have the street end there that sits between them, and then you have Rose's Landing here to the south to orient everyone. And then here's the Centennial Stairway right here, and Morro Bay Boulevard coming in here, and then this is Market Street, and then Pacific sits down here at the bottom of the screen.
Thank you.
So yeah, the idea is to go out with a request for qualifications and identify in that request for qualifications uses that we'd like to see there. And so we've done that planning process through the draft DWSP that you're going to be talking about next on tonight's agenda, and we identified a number of items that could go in this location. I might help to back up just a little bit here and note that these are slides in a presentation that I provided to the council at their last meeting last week on the 28th. And so what we did is we presented it to them and asked them for authorization to go out with the RFQ. They provided some input, and then because the GPAC was getting ready to discuss this today, so why don't you get some information, some input from the GPAC on the uses that are identified for this area, and then bring that back to us along with a draft RFQ for their review and authorization for release. And so that's kind of what we're tasked with here. A little bit of the background material for the Market Plaza is we reacquired the property for the cost of about $150,000 because we held a $1.2 million note on it and it went into bankruptcy. That's how we were able to pick it back up. Yes?
Sorry, you may be covering this in your presentation, but are you going to? I read Mrs. Hansen's letter to us. Why I ask you to identify where it was? I'm a little bit difficulty understanding the connection with her RFP and this current RFQ. And
if you're not going to cover it, would you maybe detail bring us back up to speed on what you specifically asked for in that RFP? Because I did follow that and I remember that, but I don't know if the audience knows.
Happy to touch base on that. That is in my presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, this is the map of the Market Plaza. The Market Plaza would also include development of the Centennial Parkway project because we own both properties, or all the properties identified in there that are colored in. We have great flexibility in how we go out and how we negotiate lease terms or purchase terms for those types of things. Council adopted the Centennial Parkway project back in January. So it would include the construction of that because the city doesn't have general fund monies to build that. So we would be hopefully getting that to happen as part of this process. This is some of the additional background information. As I said, we already approved the Centennial Parkway project. That's probably not okay. Talks about some of the public outreach we did. We had it says public hearings. It was actually public workshops. It was a typo on my part. Sorry about that. But the results of the draft EWSP, again, this area is identified as Opportunity Site 7 and has 4 associated catalyst projects. They're outlined there on the screen. Cultural Maritime Historical Museum, Seafood Market with produce, flowers, artisanal products. Somewhat similar to the, on a smaller scale, to the Ferry Building in San Francisco, if you're familiar with that, or the Oxbow Market in Napa. Both of those facilities were built by the same person. Other potential items that could go in there: ecotourism, and then high-end hotel, restaurant, retail, and then added by staff was a parking facility, because if we're going to remove parking lots, we need to replace it. And so we have a parking structure as part of the project potentially. And so what we want to get from you is, how accurate is that? Is this worthwhile putting these things out in an RFQ? Also, especially considering, like, number one there, we have a Maritime Museum area identified, so maybe it's a little less likely to go here. And so anyway, just getting input on those types of things from you would be worthwhile. We asked the council several questions. Should we pursue this, the RFQ process? They said yes. Did they have any strong feelings regarding whether we maintained ownership, or whether we were of the Market Plaza area properties, or whether we sold them? They said, let's remain flexible and not address that at this time, so we could negotiate with potential companies that would come forward and want to build the project. So leaves flexibility in the negotiation process. Just talked about the catalyst projects. The last item that I asked the council to weigh in on is whether we should include, because we're in this process right now, the off-the-hook lease site, and that's what Sharice was up talking about. That lease site, we've already gone out, so it makes sense to do it it makes it more attractive, and we might get more folks to propose if we have a waterfront component to this. It sort of provides. It's in fairly close proximity to these properties, obviously, as I showed you on the map. And it provides water access for recreational opportunities, to have waterfront restaurants, to have high-end hotel rooms, kind of like Sharice was talking about up top. That's what most of the RFP proposals, we're looking at potentially. And then it provides... Can I ask you a question?
Right, there we go. I'm curious, though, if you enlarge the size of the project, don't you reduce the number of people who could propose for it?
I think in this instance, because the waterfront access provides a unique idea, that it has the potential to draw additional folks in. I've spoken with several people that develop hotel projects, and that's sort of, they like unique things because it makes the project more viable for them. And so, that's, I've been a planner for about 20 years.
Right.
Coastal Town for 15 of those, 17 of those now. And most of the hotel operators, like I said, they like the unique projects the best because they seem to do better than some of the more generic ones.
So you think it might increase the number of proposals?
I believe so. I believe there's merit to that, yes.
Well, and we skipped over the Libertine. Is there a reason?
Yeah, so the Libertine, and the council actually raised that. They said, hey, can we actually have a consent of landowner issued to Burt Caldwell, the leaseholder, on the Libertine for redevelopment of that site. So we've entered into an agreement, and city council authorized that, and so even the council was go, hey, is it possible for us to unwind that? Well, basically, we already have that agreement with them, and so we don't really have that ability. But they were asking whether, because they thought, well, it would be better if we had both of these sites to open back up and offer it back out there. There is, exactly as Cherie said, there's a downside to this, and we presented that to the council, so they had that discussion. Don't think, we released an RFP. We got responses. We had 3 responses from them, Cherie's being one of them. And certainly, it's akin to pulling the rug out from underneath them a little bit. Here, though, we have some fairly serious economic, issues in the horizon for the city, and so it's worthwhile looking at all the options that we have and having a fair discussion about those things, which is the reason why we brought it forward for the council. I don't know if there's a definitive decision on inclusion of it or not at this point, but they did see the merit in having the discussion and potentially including it. We do currently, that proposal is ongoing. As you see on the screen there, their resubmittals are for their kind of highest and best shot at it are due back on the 15th of March, so coming up here pretty quick next week. And we're tentatively scheduled to take that back to council on April 11th. But that may change depending on the input that we get related to the RFQ process, and they'll have to make a decision at that point.
So if I could summarize, if I'm understanding this right, the proposal submitted for the RFP includes hotel rooms.
Hotel rooms, so the hotel rooms above,
yes,
and commercial development for the most part below.
Okay,
with some exceptions to that based on where we were at before, which is why the council sent it back to the proposers to make some changes.
So
Can we go back to the map just while we're having this conversation?
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Oops.
Yeah.
So the proposal that was received, just throw me a bone. Show me again. Like, what do we have in hand, and then what are we talking about now? I know what we're talking about now.
This is not, my battery's done or something. Okay. Is it red? Is it working?
Is it?
There you go.
So
That was,
there's
yes.
Off the Hook, there's Libertine. We have 3 RFPs that have been submitted. We went out for a request for proposals, and we received 3. We ran those through our process and vetted them, and then sort of organized them, presented them to the council, and council said, hey, okay, great. Go back, get it, have them give you your best shot, fix some of the inconsistencies with the waterfront master plan, and bring back proposals, which is what we're doing.
It seems to me that it's a little bit weird to sort of skip something and have another one there. I guess the other thing looks like is, and I apologize if I'm not looking at this properly, but when the Centennial Parkway piece really does look like it goes all the way to the waterfront, so there is already a waterfront element in here. Is that right?
Does. It does.
Those are
Okay.
public improvements. What the idea between having one of the lease sites available to it is, it provides more opportunities for someone that would be coming in and proposing there. Say you had opportunities to have your higher end, nicer hotel rooms on the water side over there, or you have the idea to have your maybe your restaurant facility for a hotel that's on the waterfront there, or have recreational opportunities. You have access there for for kayaks and things like that for your guests or for the public. However
The things that are already down there, those are already there, right?
Yeah, but
Okay.
one of the reasons why it adds additional amenities for people that build hotels. Again, more to the hey, it gives them it's a unique piece of property there, and having the waterfront access side of it is one that you wouldn't otherwise have.
So if increased TOT is the city's interest in this, and that is one of their interests, then the difference between including this in an RFQ, which would expand the size of the project, would be that presume that the RFQ respondent, if they became the eventual developer, would have more hotel rooms than Charisse is planning, or somebody else. So the TOT would be higher on that parcel. And 2, that anybody who wants to develop this big unit is going to have an incentive to do so because they get waterfront.
Again,
Is that what
it provides them more opportunities from a design standpoint and an amenity standpoint, and different configurations that you can put there to make it work. Okay. Because literally we're asking to put a pretty big public improvement in there, and so adding things that could help generate some income and return on investment to support that makes sense.
And
I think we have a question.
Yeah, but to clarify, you're not including the Libertine in this.
Because we don't have the ability to do that.
So you're giving them the property on the side, the Centennial Parkway side, and the property on Sharice's side, but they have that part in the middle that they don't have access to.
Unless it's Caldwell.
Yeah, I mean, somebody would otherwise have to engage with him. to
And
do something if they
Sharice
wanted
wants to put hotel rooms in too, like you said. So I don't.
Yeah, on that side over there, yes.
Okay.
And in terms of uniqueness, it seemed to me very unique that Market Plaza is all city-owned property, right? Whereas the other pieces we're talking about are not. Right?
No, all of everything that we're
Everything,
looking
but
at everything is the city.
everything is city. So,
Yeah,
so would all have
the
the same
lease
size.
sites on the water side all belong to the city. Some of them are leased out.
But I mean, there still is a difference in status, right? I
the
mean,
leases are up for the off the hook lease site in 2018, as are the one for the Libertine.
But I think, which maybe I'm hearing from Melanie is, for example, the Market Plaza, we own that building and the land. Over on Libertine, off the hook, that part, we own the land, they own the building. Is that correct? They own they have the lease.
Leases expire, they become ours.
I understand that, but basically, there is a little bit of a difference in.
Yes.
Scott, is it possible to send the RFQ out with some options and possibilities attached to it? I mean, one thing that I wonder is whether Opportunity Site 3 doesn't relate to this pretty well. You know, the large vacant lot next door to the Sun and Buns area, and the other piece of property that could be relevant is the Breakers Motel, which I understand has been for sale for some time.
It's sold.
It's sold. Okay.
Yeah, the good thing is that person's actually interested in doing something. So they potentially could be involved with anybody that would come forward here to do something. They've come forward and talked to us about various concepts about redeveloping that piece of property there, and wouldn't be opposed to partnering with folks if that became available to them to do that. So there's opportunities there. It's just those other properties we have no control over.
Right, but I mean, at least to make the proposers aware of possible opportunity. In other words, they could cooperate with whoever's bought the Breakers. They could also cooperate with Burt Caldwell in terms of the Libertine lease. You know that.
I think anybody that would be coming forward and talking to us before they proposed, we would sort of say, hey, you should take a look at the stuff that's surrounding there. But that's probably more along the lines of after we get the RFQs and see what the qualifications look like. Suggesting to them they go out, because we have a lot of. What's this thing? No, now it's working. This entire block here is fairly underutilized. I mean, you have a vacant lot there. You have the thrift store on the corner. You have a non-conforming house, the Bayfront car wash that's got one of the best views in town, and then another parking lot. So decidedly, maybe underutilized there, and so somebody with a little bit of vision might be able to pull something together with those. And so we can certainly suggest that they reach out to those types of, to folks that are around there, based on interest.
Scott, just a ballpark, do you have a sense of so we have a $4 million nut to crack, so to speak, projected. What percentage of our general fund is collected from sales tax?
I don't know the number on that.
Ballpark 50%, something
No,
less than that. Much smaller. Okay, and then what percent for TOT is larger and smaller than sales tax?
I think it's in the $3 million range.
Okay, so that's smaller than sales tax, probably.
No, larger.
Larger than sales tax. Okay.
The biggest chunk is property tax.
Okay, property tax. But where I'm headed with this is, number one, I have a problem with putting an all three RFPs are acceptable, then based on the criteria you put out there for them to spend money developing a plan and submitting that. So I have a concern with us basically reneging on the work that they've done and the money they've put out. And number two, I have a concern from past experience with city government is that I agree with what you're saying. A big developer will be attracted to the waterfront option, et cetera, et cetera. But also, as you make that basket, well, all your eggs bigger and all the eggs, most eggs in one basket and just a few left on the edges, when that developer comes in, they're going to demand a lot of concessions from the city, as in deferred sales tax, waivers of fees, et cetera, et cetera. So my point is, shouldn't we be looking at a mix of opportunities to attack our $4 million shortfall and not just put everything in one basket and try to take that all out with one swath?
Well, the DWSP has a lot of opportunity sites in it, and so it identifies many economic opportunities moving forward.
Okay.
This is one. And so this is one that we can start with soon. These other ones are going to take much longer to take down. So this is one site. You know, I think how many of them there's 15. This is just one. And so this is one bite. It's just a bite that we are fortunate enough to own the property on and can start moving forward with now. The other ones involve us dealing with outside parties that own the property.
Sure.
And so this is why there's a focus right here, right now, and we're going through the budgetary process right now at council level, and they're seeing, you know, the effects of the discount rate in PERS. It's a $600,000 hit over 3 years, and they're going to likely reduce it another half point to full point. So they reduced it from 7.5 to 7. They're for sure going to reduce it another half point, and maybe even more. So we're looking at substantial deficits as a result of that, because I think our last budget had about a $15,000 surplus in it.
But all that's included in that $4 million projected shortfall.
Yeah, the shortfall
with the PERS and everything else.
Service level, street paving, things like that.
So again, I think I fully support the Market Plaza and the Centennial Parkway. I just have an issue with us committing to an RFQ for a project that we did, and now we're pulling that back or thinking about rolling it into the bigger one. I just don't agree with that.
I completely understand that. We brought it forward because that's our job, is to look at these things sort of dispassionately. Sure. And council is the one that gets to make the decisions. But
I understand.
They also know that you're looking at these things, and they do want your input.
Yeah.
So it puts you a little bit on the line, and that's good. Jeff?
So, Scott, I'm really glad that the city owns these properties. Do you know, has a market analysis ever been done of Morro Bay? And is it recent? Does the city have any information about this area as well as the city in general?
There's been various studies that done over time. I don't know that we've had anything that's done more recently.
Okay.
I'm not sure. What we're looking here is, our market sort of lacks those sort of higher end hotel units.
Right.
And so that's what we'd be looking to do here, because we know we don't have that in our market here. Other than on a few of like the Anderson Inn and those ones, those are the few boutique type ones, but you have to book those things a year out if you want to do them. They're not, you can decide like, hey,
let me
next month I
say
want to
one
go
more
there.
thing, Jan.
Okay.
Say one more thing. So one more thought. So obviously we're looking at lots of things through this whole process, which is fantastic. It's great the city owns land. We have financial issues that we need to deal with, and I understand that. I feel like putting a hotel here with conference rooms and all that stuff is kind of selling our soul to the devil. I really believe that this part of the city is irreplaceable and has an ambiance to it that we need to preserve, and putting something large there is going to destroy that. We're looking at the Dynegy site now and thinking about maybe a place for a smaller hotel with conference rooms or some other location in the city. So I'm against Market Plaza being used for that purpose. I might support a parking structure. As far as Centennial Parkway, I agree with, I believe, Rick, one of the folks who came to the microphone. I think it's fine the way it is. We don't have so much money that we can throw it around making these fancy statements at different places. There is a quality to it that people do like. I just don't see it makes sense to spend any money there, to be frank, unless it's some wayfinding or signage to connect the downtown to the Embarcadero. So significant. Opportunity number 7, I like 1, 2, and 3. Not big on anything else. Okay.
So it seems we haven't talked about the Centennial enough. I think what you...
Oh, can I say one more thing? Because I want to address Glenn. I'm sorry to interrupt, but the comment about the RFQ, I guess it was Rich's comment. It's kind of tough out there to pull something back after you'd issued it, and obviously people don't like to see that. But I think in this case, it's very premature to put an RFQ or an RFP out for anything in this district until we get a lot more input from a broader constituency and really get our act together and know what we want to do there. I just have this feeling that there are people here that don't seem to really know all about it. We really haven't seen this or discussed this in great detail. This meeting, I'm glad we're focusing on it. We've touched on it, okay, but it's the first time I've seen the map and understood what the property the city actually owns, and this is something that needs much further discussion. So if it were up to me, I would pull back the RFQ and RFP and move on and say, sorry, but we've had kind of a change of plans, and I don't see that it makes sense to spend staff time or outside consultants' time to prepare stuff that I don't think you have community support for this.
So community support, this was vetted through 3 separate public workshops. So what additionally...
I think it's significant enough it should be put to a vote, frankly.
Okay. Thank you.
When you're
No, go ahead, Jen. I'm sorry.
When you're talking about a high-end hotel, what are you talking about? A small one, a big one, like a Hyatt, or because do you honestly think that we're a 5-star town? That we would attract 5-star
I think we
people?
have 1 3-star hotel in town. We don't have anything that's above that.
But
we have a 3-star town or a 5-star town. I mean,
I
we
think,
love it.
by all accounts, by all accounts, in talking with the hotel industry, the chamber, we seem, from the folks that I've spoken to anyway, they seem to be missing that component of it. We had, some of the hotels, motels, inns in town have upgraded some,
Right.
and done a nice job with that. I think part of what we're also looking at is to help some of the inns that are at the lower end raise up. I mean, we're looking at policies to do that too. It's part of our goals and objectives for the next fiscal year. So, I mean, it's not a one-size-fits-all solution, and we're looking at it from many different perspectives. This is simply one of them.
But are you talking about a limited number of rooms in this 5-star hotel, or will it be? I mean, that's what I want to know. What's the size? What's the scope of it? Are we?
Well, I mean, I think the size is going to be predicated on the design that we get that's there, because I don't think some massive structure here is going to work. It's going to have to be very respectful of the area. And if it looks like we have a parking structure behind it and we've added some storefronts maybe on the Embarcadero side of things, that's kind of, mixing in some retail, mixing in some restaurant to that, and maybe the conference center piece doesn't make sense. Maybe it does make more sense to put it on a larger site like Dynegy, were that to come forward. That's worthwhile input from you.
So I want to follow up on one of Jeff's comments a little bit. The idea of putting in a high-end hotel makes sense if you're right, that there's additional market that we could get. I think the question Jeff asked is, do we know that? And specifically a market analysis that would tell us it's feasible that we could attract new people and not just take the ones we currently get and put them somewhere else.
Just by default, we're not going to probably do much of that. But realistically, that's why you do the RFQ. They pay for that analysis.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, these are people that build hotels, and they understand the market analysis probably far better than the city does. And my experience with the folks that build these types of things is they know exactly what the market will bear and what it won't. They do their homework. They don't come into a town and want to spend millions of dollars to have a losing project.
So an RFQ is something that it's not like a train that starts and you have to keep going. Then you can say no at the other end. Then separating out the RFP for off the hook, it would be fine, because we're just doing an RFQ, and we'll find out if nobody applies, we don't have enough bait to acquire that.
Potentially.
Yeah.
But there's already a proposal in, 3 of them.
Correct.
And there's already functioning, working businesses there. I mean, my feeling as a business person is that bird in hand that's making you money and has planned improvements for expansion and development is worth a whole lot more than putting out, the proposals and requests and so on that are going to go on for at least a year or more. And then the construction phase that's going to go on for 2 or 3 or 4 years. And meanwhile, you've got holes sitting in your business districts. I mean, even the Siren, which turned out beautifully. But how long did that sit empty, creating a hole in your economy just to get a remodel done? not even we've got to tear this whole thing down and start from scratch. So, I mean, if somebody came in and had some great ideas for Market Plaza and Centennial Parkway and wanted to talk with Charisse about, gee, maybe we can partner up and make your rooms up there even, fancier, that's the kind of people we want in this town anyhow. We want the people who are working with the other business members of the community. So, me personally, I would say that's kind of, it's like biting off more than you can chew. I'm using all of the little cliches I can come up with, but it just doesn't make sense to me. And especially jumping over that Libertine property to do that, she's got a going proposition. Why would we shut the door on her? I mean, we're already going to see this Market Plaza sit empty for I don't know how many years while this process goes on.
Yeah, I
and
think
that had a going thing in it and a person who was ready to do some development. And probably, as a city, we could have gone in and said, gee, here's what we'd really like to see. Can you work with us on that? And probably he would have. But now it's on us as a community. So, I don't know. That's...
Yeah, this piece of sort of disconnected piece of land seems a little strange to me. I would like to see a conference center, whether it's here or at the other end, only because I feel like so much of what we have here is seasonal. It depends on the weather. A lot of your outdoor activities are not active, and a lot of the kayak places don't open, or they open late in the winter because there's just not the same kind of audience here. And so I would like to see something that is a little less seasonal and brings people in here in the off times, in the winter, during the week. And a conference center potentially could do that, particularly in connection with the airport expansion. So I think that's something I'd really like to see more of. I don't know I think this would be a good place for it, maybe not, but I think it does belong somewhere here, and I just want to make sure we leave room for that.
I have to disagree with Jeff on this. Just to get back to the nut of the matter, okay? I think this is a site which is crying out for redevelopment. I think to have 2 parking lots and really a relatively unattractive building on this piece of property makes no sense at all. We seem to be concentrating on the idea of a hotel. That would not be my vision exclusively. I would like to see really a mixed commercial use with retail, entertainment, restaurants on the ground floors, and hotel rooms sort of, tucked away. I think we should be sort of a little bit specific in terms of what we're asking people to design. I would like to see a structure that steps down the bluff with multiple levels. I would not like to see a building that looks like 3 stories or 2 stories. I'd like to see something that is nicely articulated. I'd like to see differing roof lines. I'd like to see differing roof slopes. And I'd like to see a sort of a seamless integration of public and private spaces, so that you walk into little mini plazas and then there's a restaurant there, or then there, So I don't see this as being a quote hotel in the classic sense of the word. I think it's too nice of a property for that, and I think having the pedestrian interest on the lower floors will bring people over to the east side of the Embarcadero that are not going over there now. Just a couple of specific comments. The museum location, I wouldn't see putting the Maritime Museum here. I think the current planned location for that is a great draw to get people over on the east side of the Embarcadero up on that end, and I wouldn't want to lose that. And the other question, I have a real question about a seafood market. I think we need to find out if that's commercially viable. I mean, we have three seafood markets now. You know what I'm saying? What I would not like to see is we build this nice space with stalls and stuff, and then we go, well, we can't. There's no farmers or seafood guys that are really interested in going in here. We're going to have to put in T-shirts. You know that, and I think there's a real risk of that happening. That we build it and then we're kind of financially pressured into a concept that we didn't envision originally.
One more thing. I don't disagree with you that much, Bob. So, the concern I have about your ideas, though, in terms of mixed use and businesses and restaurants particularly, is how that'll impact the restaurants that exist already that are maybe struggling to survive on the other side of the street. So I think we need to look at that. I could see kind of a low-rise parking structure there, coupled with some of the other things we've been talking about changing the traffic circulation, widening the pedestrian walkways and so forth along there, which would take some of that parking off of the street, put it in a low-rise parking structure. But I have no intention of leaving these two sites empty for very long.
Concealed or underground parking.
Not treated in such a way that it doesn't look like a parking structure and nothing else. But that's as far as I'll go on that, Bob.
Scott, you had mentioned, or you seemed a little bit surprised about there was no public support, and you said we'd had two workshops or multiple workshops. Forgot what exactly was said, but
no, it wasn't about no public support. It was about no public outreach. When
outreach. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so
that's all I was saying. We didn't talk about these at those. I was just
exactly
a reminder.
All right, I misspoke, but the point I'm trying to make is, oddly enough, that in the last couple of months I've had more people coming up and talking to me about not supporting the Centennial Parkway part of this. Basically what Jeff is saying and what the gentleman presented to us, that we have a functioning stairway. To build a parkway up to the Morro Bay Boulevard to get people to go somewhere, but we don't have a destination. All we have is empty lots. We have many thrift stores, and I'm not knocking thrift stores. That's my favorite place to shop. But we don't have things for people to go to. And we're going to build this. I remember, a couple of years ago, we were talking about this funicular to go up to the top. That would have been a great, fun Disneyland ride. But really, once we got to the top, there's nothing for them to do up there. So what I've been hearing from people is exactly that, and it's not been one person. It's been people that's been here since the 70s that have spoken up, and they're in real estate and other professions here that said they just don't see us putting that much money out. And then I guess a follow-up question would be, wouldn't that be all city funded for the Centennial Parkway?
That's why we're putting them
That'd
together.
Be public-private.
It's public-private partnership,
Okay.
And so it would be negotiated into the lease or purchase of the property, so
Okay.
that people would be able to amortize those improvements over time.
Okay, and I'll go back.
Or through the purchase, you could
Thank you. Yes. I'll go back to the same thing. It's going to be what I said earlier is we're going to have to, I really want myself to be paying attention to what kind of deal we give the developer as far as tax deferrals, waiver of fees, et cetera, and are we going to assume responsibility for maintenance, because that includes more staff for Parks
all stuff that's
Department?
Not part of the conversation right now.
Well,
that's way down.
but we need to think about that as we put all our eggs in one basket, I think.
Okay.
When you're talking about carving out a person that, like Susan said, that's already in business here, that doesn't require any support from the city, basically, and is bringing in tax money, and then we're talking about throwing those people out and just bringing in a bigger conglomerate to do something. It opens up a lot of questions for me.
And I think you have to go out to through this process to see what you get back, to see what that looks like, and then you will be talking with those folks and going through a negotiation process about what they'd be interested in or what they need to make this make sense. And if that's acceptable to the city, then great, we move forward. If it's not, then we don't. We do something else. I mean, this is not a locked in stone, like all of a sudden we're going to get what we just talked about. It's, and even the things we talked about, it can be similar to some of the things we have, where somebody can come forward with some very unique idea that we hadn't really been thinking of, and it could be fantastic. I don't know. So we haven't done it yet. So.
A question then. Is it possible that in the RFQ somebody could come in with something very different vision for the Centennial Parkway?
I would imagine the Centennial Parkway, when you get somebody to come in with an RFQ, and if we move forward to potential designs, that it would probably look different than what the document that's been adopted by the council looks like, because they'll want to tailor their design to interact with that.
Right.
And so just by doing that, you're going to change it, and then it'll also be much more fleshed out. And there's a whole there's a huge public process that's involved with all of that. So it's we have the concept for a plaza and a gathering spot there, but what that's going to look like, it might have the amenities that are included in there. That's more ends up being more the menu. I think we've talked about that before, and then the plan comes later. You pick the items off the menu, put them on the plan. They come forward. They design it to be integrated into the proposal that would come forward.
I'd like to see some element of, I don't know if it's a funicular, but a way for people who are less able to get up and down, whether it's to get to parking or restaurants, whatever, to do that. I think the stairs are, and the slope, the sidewalks are very far sloped. So I think that would be a wheelchair, for example. There's really no easy way to get down there.
Centennial Plaza, Centennial Park.
I think that had that in there. I don't know about
had an exterior elevator.
Right. I don't know about all the amphitheater and all that, but at least I'd like to see that there. I think what you're getting here is some real reluctance to interfere with the process that's already been there for the lot that the RFP.
Those are the notes that I take.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, I think that seems like a pretty much of a consensus here that we put something out there. There's a thriving business, and we should sort of be good to our word. And so I think you're getting that.
That's actually very good input. I mean,
and that's the thing that's what you're looking for.
It's fairly clear on that. I think that's also valuable from the council standpoint. I think they want that type of input, so I think that'll be good. I appreciate that.
I think I agree with what Susan just said, and with the chair's comments as well. I think that we've heard some really good things. I think this site's really, Market Plaza is crying out for redevelopment, and I think it's a good move to include Centennial Parkway. And I mean, it will be a very interesting deal to figure out. I hate to use the word deal these days, but anyway, it will be an interesting deal to figure out what makes it worthwhile to a developer to do Centennial Parkway, right? What kind of a project you've got to have to make that work. But I think the two things can work beautifully together. I think it does need change, and I do think that they're making this stronger connection is good. It's good for both parts of town, for what's up on the bluff and for what's down on the waterfront. In terms of the comments about, I don't, to me, it's not a compelling thing to add the additional site into this process. I think if clever developers are going to suggest things, it is an RFQ, it's not an RFP, so I agree with the hesitation to do that. But I also think it's probably, I hope Lorelai's excited to have heard all of these comments, because it sounds like folks are pretty supportive of the design guidelines that we're going to be talking about in the plan, right? So a lot of the concerns we've been talking about how you might do a project like this, how you might manifest it architecturally, those are things that are really going to be governed by the design guidelines in the plan. So, and I've heard a lot of consistency with the stuff that I was reading and some of the comments that have been made. So it seems like we're on the right path with situating this.
I think a lot of the feedback that you've been giving us dovetails into the next piece of this, which is what really does belong, what is an appropriate use for the site. It's Catalyst Project, J that we're talking about, or sorry, which one? And G, and is this project that we're talking about in Catalyst Project G appropriate for sites 1, 3, 7, 8, or 14? Maybe 7 is not that site. Or maybe it's a little bit different than we have it in this, and we can fine-tune this plan and come up with our final draft to say it's a mixed-use development with active retail frontage. This is, I've heard loud and clear from all of you tonight that this is, we don't want to create a dead zone. We don't want to create some gap in our retail frontage and our draw that keeps people going down Embarcadero. So the feedback that we're having in the conversation, we're listening, and I think that the guidelines and the Catalyst Project's discussion here that we can go through in a minute.
We don't want to create a spot that is only of interest to people who are staying in the
absolutely,
hotel.
yeah.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't.
This is our activity zone. We don't need to, make a dead zone out of this.
And the one thing,
go ahead.
1 second. The one thing that's critical to remember is that because we're talking about this site, we have the cart a little bit ahead of the horse.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
Because
very true.
we are going to deal with the general plan. We're going to deal with the zoning ordinance, and we need to pay close attention to Morro Bay Boulevard between Market Street and Main Street to ensure that the zoning there and the general plan concepts are going to encourage the kind of development that will interest people coming up from the Embarcadero. Embarcadero.
Right,
So,
exactly.
you know, they have to work together.
And this isn't about putting all of our eggs in one basket, I don't think. This is a basket. It's a basket of 15 baskets, you know, in this area, and it's one. It happens to be a little bit ahead of the others, but it's one. And one of my comments about the plan, you know, is that we can't forget the Dynegy site, right? Even when we're thinking about the downtown waterfront strategic plan, again, it's a little ahead of that process. But to me, that the two actually, you know, the Dynegy site should be part of this plan, but it can't be right now. But so yeah, it's not. We're not putting all of our eggs in one basket, I don't think, having this conversation.
Yeah. Could I just put out there, having been in business for 10 and a half years now up on Morro Bay Boulevard, and hearing all the conversations and reading all the reports and the discussion of connectivity and all this great stuff, frankly, all you need to do is put some good signage down on the waterfront that says this way to Old Town, downtown, uptown, whatever the heck you want to call us, directive signs up that way. It's cheap. You're not talking about building anything. People will start following the signs. They will walk up those stairs or get in their cars and drive back up. You get people all the time who've been coming here for generations and say, gee, we didn't know this part of town was here. So you just have to tell them. And that's so simple, so easy. Yes, it'll be great when all of that stuff gets developed in between, you know, one way or another, whether it's beautifully landscaped parking lots or whether it's businesses. But you've got to put the signage there. And I don't know why it hasn't been done. So.
It's one of our catalyst projects.
Yes, yeah, it is one of the.
It's one of the most important catalyst projects.
That's perfect.
Yeah. Exactly, I agree with that. Two points. The signs. I'm glad you brought that up, Susan, because again, my wife and I walk every day the Embarcadero, some part of the town, and. For some reason, I guess we've finally been here long enough that people don't think we're tourists, and they actually think we live here. So they'll stop us. And in fact, last week they stopped right in front of the restrooms and the chessboard and said, "Do you know where Morro Bay Boulevard is?" And we go, "Yeah, right there." We looked all over the place, and there is no sign that says, up there is Morro Bay Boulevard. Just some temporary signage until we can get through the process would help. I bet it would pay for itself. And the second thing is, back to Jeff's market analysis, I hope that, and I realize this is probably premature, but the citizens need to understand and know how much of that, I'm going to use that $4 million number, how much of that $4 million nut we're trying to crack will be accomplished by this development. And I think that would help for people to understand the need for that. If they know that, just shooting figures, if it's 25%, is it 50% of the net? I don't know, but we need to have at least, I'm sure there's some analysis available that could give us a preliminary idea. You as a planner would probably know in that piece about how many rooms that we could put on there by code and how much money that would generate. So we could get a rough idea of what kind of monies we're talking about to help offset our tax liabilities.
Just DOT would be $500,000 to $1 million.
Okay, so see, that's the things that I think we need to market to the citizens to get the support that these things are real. They're not just replacing the old fallen down buildings. This is real money we're talking about to offset a critical shortfall, because PERS is going to continue to get worse and worse.
Yes.
Yeah.
Scott, you said the TOT would be $500,000 to $1 million based on how many rooms? How many rooms would it take to get that?
Probably in the 50 to 100 range.
How many rooms does the Morro Bay have?
But don't we have at least that now?
I don't know the exact number. I'm sorry.
I'm just trying to get a reference.
But don't we have about that many?
120, 130, something like that. Yeah, I knew it was 100 something.
So we have over 100 rooms now, but we don't get $500,000 on TOT.
No, we have 918.
So I'm just wondering, how can you say that you're going to get $500,000 on 100 rooms if you don't get that now?
Oh, we do.
We do.
Well, we do?
Yeah. On the higher end, it does, we do, yes.
Okay.
Has anyone talked?
That's where I got the number from. I wasn't making it up. It's information that we have. It's out there. Our tourism board looks at those.
Is that site big enough for 100 rooms and parking places and so on and so forth?
Depending on how you laid it out, I say between 50 and 100 because I agree with the concept of mixed use, and because I think we want a lot of retail around the exterior because we want that to remain. We want to increase sort of the liveliness of the area down there. We don't want to reduce that. It already doesn't have anything on it for people to go to other than the parking lots and one restaurant. That doesn't really. It's not much activity. So if we were able to add some more retail on another restaurant or something over there, that would increase the activity that was there, or some sort of, it could maybe have events or something, I don't know. But.
Would that also answer whoever spoke about the need for entertainment up in that area of town? I think it was a gentleman here too.
It could, depending on what we put in there.
Yeah.
I mean, we've talked about it. I mean, even the parking structure there, having a portion of it that on top of it has a programmable space that you could have events at or something. So, I mean, it could be an observation because the views from on top of the bluff are fantastic. And I don't know that we want to, allocate all of those to hotel rooms or something of that nature. I think we would like to have some public space up there that could be used for other things.
And for Jan's question about the amount of rooms, if there's space, didn't we talk about in some discussions about vacating Market to allow that space, that square footage to possibly
all part of the what is possible out there, stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, I don't know that early on you want to take any of those types of things necessarily off the table because we'd like to see what people come back and propose and what ideas they would come up with. If they could use the space.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, at the very least, Market Street does not need to be as wide as it is in that area.
We were planning for major.
Yeah.
I don't know, major thoroughfare through there. I'm not sure they get 80-foot right-of-ways and things. So
tanks.
I mean, we got some pretty good input, and I do want to kind of jump into the DWSP. Are we comfortable there? Are there things that people haven't had a chance to say?
Just one last thing. Will we get to see the response to the RFQ and comment on it as a group? When we see the plan.
The RFQ, the council has us go through that process. There'll be a review panel that reviews them, and the council will probably review that. They may direct it goes through another body or not. That's up to them. I don't presume to know what they're going to do with that. We haven't had that conversation yet. It was very timely that you all were reviewing the DWSP, and they said we would like to get a little more input on this. And so it was a good opportunity, and you guys have been entrenched in this for a while now.
So to sum it up then on this, we're going to let Sharice's RFP still stand, or was that included in the RFQ?
We're just giving a recommendation.
You're giving your input to the council, and the council will take that input and make whatever decision they decide to make.
One last thought, Scott. It might be helpful in the future when RFPs and RFQs go out, because there's so much going on in the city, that a copy gets sent to the citizens advisory committees that have been working on those things, because it'd be good. I try to keep up with it, but things slip through the cracks.
You can actually sign up.
I know. I signed up for too many, and I get like a zillion.
The bid piece. The bid page.
Bid page only?
Yeah,
okay.
So you can sign up for that. We do, and oftentimes we do go out for bids if they're interesting ones. They'll be in the hot topics thing on the front page of our website as well. I think you can sign up for Notify Me for that too. That might be an easier one. I don't know. This one would absolutely be one that we put up there for people to see.
I probably over-notified myself.
So you're like, Scott, stop sending this stuff. Yeah, thanks.
I know that I've had my 3 minutes, but I have some answers to some of the things you guys had questions about that you didn't get answers to.
We'll open public comment to hear from you.
Should I walk you there?
Yep.
Okay. I feel like I've said some piece, but I'm just going to touch on these bases. For the RFP that's standing, the income from TOT would be similar to what anybody else would be able to put into that space, so there would be no loss with going with this RFP and going with a new RFQ. One of the things about it is just one piece, but it's also a huge aspect of our income is the Morro Bay Embarcadero, and that's the center of it. So it is a very important aspect. It might be just one parcel in Morro Bay that you guys have to think about, but it's a huge economic growth part that you don't want to have shut down. And then also activities, shopping is growing. I'm doing well year-round. This January, not so good, 41 shut. Rain every single day. Well, not every single day, but on the weekends. And so I've actually brought a lot of people because I don't sell T-shirts. Well, I do sell T-shirts, but they're not Morro Bay sweatshirts. And although I'm going to reduce myself to selling those again because it's what pays the rent, that's not who I am, and that's why people come here is because I have unique items. And then you asked about like the difference of the parcels of land. Well, the ones that are on the water are actually state-owned, and they're managed by the city, so they get to lease it out. So it has different constraints on that side, plus it has the 5%, which they have to negotiate maybe with city-owned property in that process. But they are going to have completely different leases, I would assume, because one is governed by the state, or however the vernacular is for that. When you said a seafood place, you take out other people who have been important in this community for years. So to have a giant thing like Pike's Place is super awesome, really cool, but we can't bite the hand that feeds us, and I wouldn't want to see them do that either. There are some plans with GAFCO, Great American Fish Company, who wants to do some plans, and they've been working on that for years. And then also you mentioned how cool it would be to design a really neat building with tiers and different types of roofing and lines. The more money that the city wants this new developer to pay for Centennial Parkway, which is not going to give them any money, they're going to have to maximize the viability of that building, and you're just going to get boxier and boxier the more that they have to pay for this. And then the other thing is that Blue Sail Inn, it's done perfectly fine over on their side. So if you give them a lot that is getting into the view, Blue Sail Inn decide they're the ones that own that property below, and the reason why they don't develop it is because they don't want to obstruct their view. So if you give a mass developer a nice big chunk to do hotel rooms, he's not going to want to obstruct his or their or her view. So I worry about that. I worry about them leaving it kind of more dormant and not like the main aspect. Oh, and then I think that as far as it needs parking down there or inside, and there's ways to have it inside and not like so you have to see the cars all parked there. I like the idea of having retail along the street, the idea of having fingers where they walk in and out. Being on the Embarcadero, I have witnessed firsthand all the different people who have just tried to have their shop one door down from the actual walkway of the Embarcadero. People want to walk like this. They don't want to go like this. And although we're trying to have the walkway along the sides, I would be concerned that the places that you put in those fingers on the other side of the street, how hard it would be for those small businesses to operate. So for now, I would say, in the front, at least, the nice facade, because it would be nice to have thoroughfare. More shopping around is good business. It's not competition. It brings the people here in general, and I welcome it. Any questions for me?
Anyone else who would like to speak at this time while public comment is open?
All right, thank you.
Thank you. So we'll close public comment, bring it back to the committee, and we'll move on to the downtown waterfront specifics.
Great, thank you. Good conversation. All right, so Downtown Waterfront Strategic Plan, I hope you've had some time to spend looking through it, and I hope all of our visitors to the website have had some time with it since our last meeting and since it's been up online. I'll go ahead and just take you through the key features of the plan. A lot of this is reminding you, since we meet monthly, bringing you back up to speed on what we've been doing, kind of going on our checklist. But you've seen this probably 4 or 5 times now, but our objectives when we began the Downtown Waterfront Strategic Plan as part of the overall Plan Morro Bay is to focus a little bit more on making an action plan for staff to, and the public and private sector to look at as the low-hanging fruit, the things that we want to start on now, since our general plan is such a long-range plan. What can we be doing in the next 5 or 10 years? What are the actions we should be working on? What are the very first steps? Like maybe looking at an RFP, sooner than later. How can we get going immediately? I'm actually as a consultant who works for many municipalities, I'm really impressed with how you guys have vetted issues, how staff are hungry to keep going and keep things moving. It's very impressive. It doesn't happen everywhere. So I commend you on that. Crafting some design guidelines, connecting the downtown and waterfront, identifying policies and actual projects that can be developed, and charting a clear path to implementation. That's what we're here to do in this plan. So far, we have initiated a City Voice survey, put out blast to the media to kind of raise awareness for the project and get people to the community meetings. We've done a series of downtown waterfront stakeholder interviews and some key focus groups about the overall Plan Morro Bay project. And, of course, we've had a number of GPAC meetings as well. And so through our outreach, we've heard a lot of things about what you value most as a community and what you think are missed opportunities, perhaps, or things that we should be focusing on in the future. So we've done a couple different exercises in a lot of different mediums. And some of those, as you may recall at our first workshop, were design preferences. What do you value most? Actually, this was our second workshop. What do you value most? What would you like these areas to look like? So when we're focusing on downtown and waterfront, what are the character-defining elements that you would like to see? Do we want them to be similar, or do we want to set the downtown and waterfront apart? And we kind of took you through some exercises looking at some images, what resonates with you, what is, what are you very averse to, what does not scream uniquely Morro Bay, but what feels, very much us. So looking at how you've kind of voted on downtown and waterfront look and feel, we've heard as far as building elements, like traditional and eclectic in downtown and something more nautical and seaside. These seem, they seem like obvious choices to us now, but we had to go through this exercise to see, what our overall kind of look and feel is. Streetscape furnishings, we wanted to understand how these should be themed, and we heard the same sort of result. We want these to be different, but have some kind of commonality so that there's some consistent thread that you're in Morro Bay. Gateway features, archways for downtown versus sculptural and artistic interpretations in the waterfront. Signage, something figurative and whimsical in the downtown to express our artistic ability and nature, and then in the waterfront, of course, keeping with the nautical and rustic. We also heard that the things that kept coming up most through the outreach process were just completing our existing harbor walk, making it a unified, consistent walkway for visitors and residents alike. Supporting the fishing industry is something we consistently hear through Harbor Advisory Board, through the community outreach, promoting educational and cultural uses along the waterfront. And that can include artistic, when we say cultural, we mean culture and art. Key vision themes to date. So you've seen this, and it's kind of evolved through your input and kind of wordsmithing over time, but some of the things that we found through this process is that you'll see the words in blue that kind of rise to the top. I won't read these all over again for the fifth time, but rich fishing industry matters most to you. We have a working waterfront. Our vision is unique, eclectic, charming, and artistic. It's vibrant and economically diverse. We enjoy our memorable views and connections to nature. Opportunities to walk, trolley, and bike safely are important to us. Natural beauty is always key here, and thriving and robust local economy is something we want to have in the future as part of our future vision. So now this kind of brings us to what we've been talking about quite a bit this evening, but opportunity sites. So out of our outreach process and the community engagement, we've identified a series of opportunity sites. We've added to the list. We usually start, with the key. What are the most important and most opportune sites that are ripe for reinvestment or investment today, or maybe they're just quote unquote underutilized and have a higher and best value. What do you think is needs to make change in order to be part of our future vision? And we've come up with 15 sites. Some of them aren't sites as much as they are corridors, but those are part of our downtown waterfront strategic plan. And then we've also moved on to talk about the key catalyst projects and kind of attach those to some of the sites. We wanted to make sure that this document, while it provided direction to the general plan, gave flexibility to the development community. In the great number of downtown revitalization plans or waterfront plans I've worked on, I find that having conversations with developers, you want to give them a direction that you'd like to see the city go, and you'd like them to tell you where, what makes the most sense to them. They're in business because they do their job well, hopefully, and they and they can make things pencil, and it's a dialogue. So this tool is the staff's starting point for discussion and a tool to open up that discussion. I think the discussion we're having right now, incorporating the feedback we're talking about tonight and putting it in here, will just give more objective to this document by telling the development community, look, scale is very important to us. Look, activity on the waterfront and our Embarcadero is critical to us. We are afraid that there would be dead zones if we had just a standalone hotel that was just here to attract visitors. Those are important messages for us to give, and this is the document and the vessel to do that. And I think it's going to help staff and the both public and private partnership discussion.
So should we stop and maybe take comments?
Do you want to do
on
that
the
now? Yeah,
opportunity
before we
sites
start jumping into
before we
Catalyst
move into the
projects. I talk
Catalyst
fast,
projects?
so please interrupt.
Sorry, I just had a question. I thought last time we did this, we were talking about North Main Street, and we had the power plant site, and I don't, and some of the places where the sewer plant or the water. Sewer water plant is going. It seems like there's some stuff missing.
This is the downtown waterfront strategic plan, but you're right, and this is actually one of the most talked about pieces in our last workshop and at our last GPAC meeting. But this is one of the opportunity sites, and let me go back, selected some micro sites to actually
sites within the opportunity.
Yeah,
I was a little confused
because it wasn't complicated enough. No, you're absolutely right. So there's a larger umbrella of the Plan Morro Bay, and we have, as a city, a lot of opportunities. One of those is our downtown and waterfront area. And so within that, we're going to focus more on the guiding of development and our character. And that's what we can do with this tool. The overall general plan doesn't necessarily have design guidelines in most cases. A community character element can, but this is kind of our way of showing the development community what type of development we'd like to see. Yeah, good question.
But while we're on the subject, I do think that, at least in the intro section, we could reference the Dynegy site. I mean, I feel like it's not a quarter, but like a lot of the frontage of this plan, on the east side is the Dynegy site. So it's not as if I'm suggesting at this late date or in any way we could include it, but just to say, can we acknowledge it and just sort of make sure that the reader knows?
Yeah.
It's like this related elephant on the living room.
Or talk about how the general plan, the Plan Morro Bay process.
Right.
This is one big opportunity site within all of the citywide opportunity sites, and how I think that actually is a really interesting infographic that pops up in my head, is how it all relates, how this, this entire process of several years, really comes down, and how this piece of the puzzle fits into it all. Right. I think that's a really great point, and I think we are at a point now where we have a lot of that stuff to develop, something that explains the connection.
How does this work with many, if not most, of these opportunity sites are private property? They're owned by somebody who's, perhaps underutilizing, or so in the general plan we would have recommended uses, we would have mandated suggestions. I mean, where does that fall when you say, gee, this is an opportunity site, you could do something a whole lot better there, but how does that have any...
Yeah, because we are out ahead of that in what we're proposing. We're able to feed information into the Plan Morro Bay process. So we did this very intentionally to say, great, you're going to be working on this 20-year vision for the entire city and how it will work, including land use and zoning. But meanwhile, we're going to have a really deep conversation about microsites within this and what we want to be as a downtown and waterfront, what we should look like in the future. So this is our opportunity to talk about whether or not Site 7 is appropriate for a hotel. And so that will feed into our zoning discussion, which happens next. That is the next logical piece of this process. So it's a really great starting point for discussion. This will kind of help us set our high-level vision and give us steps to get there, but it will also be feeding input into the overall planning process, general plan process. So good question. Process.
So back to I'm still kind of stuck on the money and cracking that $4 million nut. It occurred to me as we're talking about these opportunity sites, have you guys done any analysis, or has anybody done any analysis on the potential sales tax revenue from these opportunity sites? And in particular, if you have, then we need to look how that relates to the current zoning and potential zoning changes to maybe increase the potential for sales tax revenue off of those parcels. Have we done any of that?
So let's, not to be a downer, but we could add 200 new businesses in town, of the size that we would see in that corridor, because we're not going to add even small box stores in town, really. We don't have places for those. It's inappropriate. I mean, I can't imagine what that would look like even. So you're going to get small sales tax generators, and the amount of money that it would take, say if you added 200, we might get into the, a couple 100,000 max of sales tax revenue out of that. I mean, it's not going to be very much. And so that, we want to have better retail, and we want to upgrade that because that makes our town more attractive, and it provides better services and places for people that live here to shop and people that visit the shop. It's great to raise the bar, but that's not going to dig us out of that hole. It's a piece, and actually a pretty small piece. Because we're not going to go get a Walmart or something. I mean, those are you get big tax generated out of, we're not going to put a big brand new, probably, some of this a car sales lot, somewhere out there, where things that you get large tax dollars off of. And we're not set up that way.
I had a sense that that's what you'd say, but I'm kind of trying to throw out some ideas that we might use to educate the public on the need to what you're trying to accomplish, and show them the amount of money you can expect from the development you threw up here versus those little sites, and let people understand these type of things. And if you show them those trade-offs, maybe it'll make more sense to people and get more support.
Yeah, that's a great point, Rich. We're actually working on that. I mean, as we speak, for the budget presentations we're going to have at the council level. It's one thing to say, hey, we're at about a $4 million shortfall, but it's also another thing. We need to inform the public about what that looks like, how you close those gaps, what can close the gaps, what can't. The retail idea, that's not going to get us there. We'll develop our way out of it. I mean, you're not going to get anybody. I mean, that sounds terrible, doesn't it? But I mean, it's ridiculous, because you say, well, we can go develop 1,000 homes. Well, what are we going to get a property tax out of? That's going to be very small. It's going to maybe get us, $500,000, maybe less than that even. It's just, those aren't plausible ways to dig out of that hole. So that we have to look at other things.
I will say that one of the things that you have to look at it as a holistic thing, right? So our occupancy is nowhere near 100%. Winter, it's probably 40 to 50% at best, right? Summer, maybe on some weekends it's 100, but probably more often, maybe if we're doing good, it's 70 to 80. So if you have a more vibrant community with not a bunch of empty lots, so it's more attractive, there's good shopping opportunities, not just another thrift store, which we all love, but we need some diversity in that. You're not going to get, like you say, the revenue. I mean, I think about how much I pay in sales tax each year, which is a good chunk every quarter, but there's a small percentage of that actually comes back to the city. It goes to the county, the state, and so on. But you have that vibrant, business community, you're offering services, you're offering cool opportunities and maybe some recreation, then your rooms start to fill up. So then you're getting your TOT, and you're getting more of it year-round. And that's, again, where the idea of the conference center would make sense during your off-seasons, your midweeks. To me, I would go for that small to medium size where you're pulling in, the teacher conferences or the marriage counseling conference or whatever they do. I don't know. But, you're pulling in the midweek kinds of things, maybe some small tech groups, but it's filling those rooms in the long run that is the real low-lying fruit, easy money. But you kind of need that town to be inviting.
Well, and this document is really, it's whimsical and it's real because we're reverse engineering from our vision to get to actions to give everybody direction on what to do next. It's overwhelming. This is a lot of planning. But to what you're just saying, this is our one chance to stop thinking about the TOT and to stop thinking about those numbers right now. They're very important, but to say, what do we really want to be? Not when we grow up, because we don't want to go up. When we in the future, what do we really want to be as a community? And every conversation that we have here, even though we're going to be talking about zoning and we're going to be talking about land use, the overarching theme of every conversation for your general plan is who do we want to be, what matters most, and then how do we make it happen, and how do we make it pencil, and how do we, but you can't let those things get in the way of it, or you cannot get past the conversation of visioning. I mean, I've seen it happen in communities all the time, and we don't have productive conversations unless we can put on our visioning caps and put away our calculators for a little bit and just say, but that's fun, but who do we want to be? And I think this document really, everything we've heard, I hope that everyone from the workshops and that you all can see your finger and your fingerprint on this plan, because everything we've heard has somehow made its way in here, or has fallen into that category of things that were interesting ideas, but they didn't meet the majority's, desire and need from what we were hearing. So you are our checks and balances to tell us, you really missed this. I've heard it from everyone and it's not here. I don't think that's going to happen, but you guys tell us. So, yeah. So,
Lorelei,
yes.
This is the downtown waterfront specific plan. And yet
Strategic.
13 out of the 15 opportunity sites are west of Monterey Avenue. And I'm going to go back to the point I think I made to you personally some time ago. To me, City Park is a huge opportunity site. Okay, if that park were enlarged to include the entire block and developed, then the underdeveloped properties on the north side of Harbor Street and on the south side of Main Street would suddenly become much more attractive for businesses.
I liked our conversation at the last meeting, and fortunately the public draft was published at that point, and site number 13 I think can encompass all of those pieces. I think it's instead of doing piece by piece, I think it's maybe that opportunity site grows, or we've also talked about in the general plan process having that be its own opportunity site to include the Triangle Park. It's a gateway. It's our key gateway into the city and a big lasting impression.
All the public facilities in that area, the library, City Hall,
yeah,
police department, fire
a
department.
campus master plan for our downtown, our city hall.
Close access to the Albertsons shopping center. It really that could be the nucleus for the east side of downtown Morro Bay.
Yeah, I think I was happy to see the 13 there. I think it could be a little bit bigger.
Yeah, I like that.
There's a lot of just empty.
I think we've heard that in our last discussion.
Building that's been sitting there for I don't know how many years. Also, I think that Robert had brought up the idea of the land adjacent to City Park last time as possible expansion of the park, and I think that is something to keep in mind.
Yeah, that sounds good. I know. I think based on what we heard at the last meeting too, I think all of those ideas should be incorporated into our next draft for sure. I agree.
Just wanted to get that on the record.
Yeah, no, I'm glad, and don't hesitate to continue.
So Chair Taft, including City Park, and you and I talked offline on this, but also kind of the block that it sits on, because there's some seriously underutilized properties there, and ones that are ripe for redevelopment. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And on your catalyst projects with the seafood market, and that was brought up also that we have several seafood markets. So are we looking for another one, or are we looking for maybe developers who want to come in and sort of support the fact that those exist and enhance what's around them, or what?
Yeah, so the reason this continued to make the list is because we had kept hearing, how can we support and celebrate our fishing industry? How can we do something uniquely Morro Bay? And what are we most known for? What's our niche on the Central Coast in California, in the world? And, how can we celebrate that? And so whether it be a true very quaint, small, artistic version of Pike's Place Market is the only common, I think, language we could all relate to, or something. Maybe maybe it is something that sells our local artisan wares and handmade, local-made goods. I don't see it as being, I think it's something to keep as a conversation because we've heard it so many times as we're craving this outlet, this way to do that. We don't ever want to put our favorite fish markets out of business. That's not at all the intent, but to, just like in Farmers Market in San Luis Obispo, there is a very big discussion of, gosh, I don't want food trucks because it takes away from our local businesses that have restaurants. So what we do is we have Farmers Market, and we do have an opportunity for that. And every one of those local businesses that is near or wants to participate has a booth out that weekend and can have that extra, opportunity to do something exciting and create an event and a buzz and a big local draw that feeds. I mean, Farmers Market does so much more for San Luis Obispo than activates their Thursday nights. It really does. It has put it on the map. I know people who go, San Luis Obispo, you guys have a great Farmers Market. Mm-hmm. And they're from Wichita. So it's interesting what it will do. But it's an idea that we didn't want to fall off. I thought it had merit and was exciting. The intent is not to, jeopardize what we have at all, but it's to celebrate and, to use that momentum to move forward. What it looks like is really up to how it is worked out in the details, but it's something that we thought we've heard enough and has a really great potential to be something neat to stay on the list.
There's been a big push in the Urban Land Institute in the last year to recognize the role of food in real estate. It's really a movement that is being looked at in a bunch of different ways across the country, but the idea that when you've got local sort of very authentic kind of food concepts or food products, this really drives economic value in property and in projects. So it's a concept that I was really happy to see celebrating that. And I don't know, it's hard to know what the market is for something like this, but I really think it's very current and it's very consistent with really, frankly, what the national developers of all different scales are really recognizing and starting to celebrate this concept. So I think it has a lot of merit to
and the way this tool will be used, again, this is a tool for staff and the public and private sector to start a dialogue. So, memorializing our ideas that we've all talked about in our community outreach process and as a GPAC and as a community, having these in here as ideas is really a starting point for discussion. And again, the RFP process is how you utilize that. Hey, we want to see what you have. Developers who do this all the time will be like, we did this in Tokyo. We did this, at a very small scale in a rural town and, in some other place. We don't know what it looks like. We don't even have a sophisticated enough vocabulary, but it can be something completely unique and never done anywhere else, or it can be something that has proven successful in other places at a scale that's appropriate for Morro Bay. So.
The seafood market, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seemed to recall that the genesis of the seafood market was a discussion about having a place for fishermen to come and sell their fish right on the dock, so to speak. And I think we started that. Don't we have a permit down at Tidelands to allow people to do that, but it never kind of got off too well?
Some of the fishermen do sell down there.
Right.
I don't think it's widely used. I think the concept came up out of some of the workshops that we did. They thought that would be interesting. And then it's not just, the idea wasn't just that, it was sort of the other artisanal products that you could have there. And in fact, internally, I gave you examples of the Oxbow Market and those things. They're much larger ferry building in San Francisco, much larger, ideas than that. But one of the folks that was involved with the development of that actually is a part-time Morro Bay resident. And, so we've talked to him about it and picked his brain a little bit about what that could look like. Mm-hmm. And he says, point me in the direction of some land and we can make it happen. And I said, well, what's it look like on Morro Bay scale? And he had some ideas about that and some other communities that are doing things that are similar. So it's you bring that in, you have somebody that's selling avocados in there and somebody that's selling coffee, and you can go and have a cup of coffee, or you can buy some coffee. I mean, it's that type of stuff that you could go in there. I mean, and it would be something it's not just for visitors coming to town, but it's people that live here.
So is the title Seafood Market appropriate then?
Yeah, I'm not sure it is.
Yeah, maybe it's misleading. Maybe that's where the. Whatever.
Because see, as I read, I was recalling that previous discussion
Sure.
I said, but also, like for City of San Diego, I think is in their third year of their market where the fishermen come to the
Yeah.
docks and sell.
Maybe it's
and
just
they're
called our local
gangbusters.
our
down
local.
there on that. I'm not advocating that, but
I like that. That's
maybe
a good
we
point.
need to. If it's not a seafood market, if we're more a bazaar, an outdoor
Yeah.
market, something.
Yeah. Or, I mean, the market hall term is a good one, to encompass a lot of things, if we're talking about a building. But yeah, there's outdoor components too.
What else would make people visit it? So if it's our local goods, our local something, yeah.
The other thought I have is that we have kind of that in place with people doing that already, and I think if we promote what's there already, with signage and marketing and so forth, it'd be great. And you can have more than one, so I don't see it as a large central.
It can be part of a convertible space. It can be, it
absolutely.
doesn't have to be a permanent installation. However, there's some sites that could really accommodate it as part of a project too, where it's just a promenade corridor between the project and they close it,
You could have holiday craft fairs.
I know.
You could have snacks available for people to have in their hotels. There's really not a place to go down there to get, unless you just want a big dinner.
Yeah.
So, and you can see there'd be some smaller shops like that.
Yeah.
Looking at this map with the opportunity sites, I'm struck that in the intersection of Main and Morro Bay Boulevard, there's nothing. And that is downtown. That's the old town. And I'm wondering if there's might be some way to take Rick's idea of entertainment and maybe this market and look at that space between Market and Main Street and see if that could be developed as a magnet so that you can attract people toward downtown with the activity.
Yeah, so we have heard quite a bit about that. This is our actual crossroads. This is our connection, where we should be pointing to. That this is our hub. This is our activity node. And so we've put on there in the yellow dashed line street improvements, public improvements. So it really alludes to not just streetscaping, but in the form of benches and signage and nice trash receptacles. But perhaps it is a really neat, mariner's compass in the middle of the street that we use to kind of show that this is something more than that. Or are you actually talking about physical development projects on the key corners around that?
Not necessarily on the corners there, but in that 2-block stretch. I think Susan was making the point generally earlier that in a sense, if you build it, they will come. And one of the things that we can't do is simply put a hotel in just because they're not going to come just for a hotel. People come here because there's something fun to do. And so making downtown more fun would get more people there. The Siren's been successful because they programmed it. It doesn't just happen, but you need to plan for that. And maybe if we're talking about a seafood market, a bazaar,
Thank you. Yeah.
maybe that's a kind of magnet that could help to get people into that area. So,
Yeah.
Well, the one thing about the seafood market, it wouldn't have to be a permanent structure to begin with. It could be trialed, with a tent, or something like that. I mean, to me, the main thing that we need between Morro Bay Boulevard and Market Street, or between Main Street and Market Street, is people. So we'll get to this. I don't know that this is part of this particular plan, but if you allow that to be retail, entertainment, restaurant on the ground floor, and visitor serving on the second floor, you kind of have a built-in group of people that are going to go to that area.
I think we discussed this too. One of our could have been one of my focus groups, but why couldn't we look at this thought? I mean, this seafood market, I agree with Glenn, bazaar, whatever you want to call it, could fit in there nicely and just be an expansion of the farmers market that's on Main and connect that down through there, even until the developer comes in and develops. You start training people because they know there's something up there. There's a sign that brings people up. There's a sign that tells people where Morro Bay Boulevard is, and there's something to go up for, and they start kind of, well, what's over there? What's over the hill? We're curious people. We kind of most of us are going to go, let's check this out.
Yeah, I think the signage and the wayfinding signage, especially.
Expanded farmers market could encompass a lot of the things you have in this, which you described for the seafood market. So.
Well, and to that end, I've actually had numerous conversations with the chamber that operates farmer's market to wrapping it around the corner off of Main. And they've been looking into doing, Erica Crawford's been looking into doing some of those things to start some of that, to see if you can't push some of the folks around.
Right.
And so when you do come up to the top of the Centennial, you look up, you're like, oh,
Right.
what's that?
Exactly.
You see that?
Yeah.
We got a farmer's market going on. So,
Yeah.
I mean, those are certainly conversations and things we've been tracking, over time for.
Just a thought on that, and I'll try to be quiet. In Escondido, what we did was we in our farmers market, we have a certain section for 1 year, and then the next year is the next section. So the markets, the businesses that feel impacted negatively don't have to bear the brunt of it for more than a year. The businesses that feel that benefit positively, and then the other businesses in the other part feel like we're left out, they all get that chance to have the people come by their part just by changing it every year.
Interesting.
That's an interesting idea. I think I'm definitely going to talk to Erica about that.
Yeah, I like that.
That's a good idea. Thanks.
Just on the family outdoor entertainment, one thing I would, number one, I see you have a picture of Anchor Park here with the artificial grass at the bottom.
It's supposed to allude to mini golf.
all we need is a windmill. But what I was going to say about that is I think we should keep in mind that one of the things that actually attracts people to Morro Bay is it's a dog-friendly environment, and people who have dogs and campers and that mobile homes come here specifically because there's so many restaurants that welcome dogs, and so
maybe that family outdoor entertainment description in that Catalyst project.
I think it's part of it. I think that's probably part of it, but it's just not mentioned any place.
Oh yeah,
there's not too many hotels that take them. It'd be kind of nice if this new one
kind of special. Yeah, great. That's good to hear.
Just one last comment on the fish market and so forth. On your slides, slide number 27, I think there's a great picture on the right-hand side that shows a lot of street activity. We could use that section from Main Street down to Embarcadero and make it the street activity. Move the farmers market now, Have street activities going all the time. People will be there. Like you said, it needs people. The connection will be made. We won't have to spend a dime.
Great. So,
in terms of Catalyst projects H and I, just while we're still talking about Catalyst projects, I just think they focus a lot on furnishing palette, but I think we've talked so much about signage. We just want to make sure that it's it's probably somewhere. It might be in the language.
It is. It's in the implementation strategy as important, but as far when we say street furnishings, the signage is incorporated into it. But I think maybe maybe we need to be more specific or call that out a little bit more.
Such the obvious missing piece.
That's been a key theme.
In some places you have a downtown, you have maps. And people can look at the maps and say,
"You are here.
Oh, look at that over there.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was there." Also, I think your opportunity signage, where if you've got a farmer's market and you're trying to get people up, farmer's market today up there.
And this is a very detailed comment, but I do also think that Morro Bay is not that big of a town, and so a wayfinding signage program doesn't need to be themed by like the Embarcadero versus the downtown. Like there should be a system that it gets implemented, and it probably should go up to North Morro.
Simple, clear, easy.
Clear. It's just that doesn't have to be like the thematic part of this.
Yeah, unfortunately, the city's tried to do this and done it poorly. Even you see the wayfinding signs that we have, and one you can't read it. You got busy signs, and they look. I guess I thought when you looked at them, like, oh, those are cute. But what happens is you can't read them, and then the arrows are unclear where they're pointing, and they're inconsistent. I actually think the city of San Luis did a pretty good job putting up their wayfinding signage. It's clear, readable, and simple. I like it points to the areas you want to go. I was like, we need to do that.
And you can see it whether you're driving or walking. And
they have both. They have both
So
and for cars and bikes. So I mean, it was. When they put that up, I was fairly impressed with it. It was simple, straightforward, and seemed mostly accurate for where I was going.
So are we hiring their designer soon? Like next week we're going to...
It's Catalyst Project or PR6 in here. So develop and implement a wayfinding program that includes both auto-oriented directional signage and pedestrian-oriented maps and signs. Wayfinding signs should be coordinated with other streetscape furnishings and reflect the design theme of the district, downtown, or waterfront. So.
And it could be piloted. I mean, I'm a big fan of pilots. So, I mean, it could be piloted. You could get a studio at Cal Poly to take this on, and you could do a pilot of even, walking distance signs. Glendale just did that this year.
Oh,
It was
that's
like a trial. And so, there's a lot of different ways to do
Yeah.
it. And do it quickly.
It's our low-hanging fruit. It's the shortest-term option. So I think it's the biggest bang for your buck that people can see that we're taking action tomorrow or in a year or two.
So, Lorelei, I'm sorry, Bob, go ahead.
Well, I mean, one unique kind of challenge that we have here is the businesses that are, as the young lady was mentioning, the businesses that are located not on the street in the Embarcadero. We need to somehow point those out to people.
Yeah, agreed. We have some guidelines on signs as well, because I'm a big fan of, hey, look down here, don't forget us, as long as it's coordinated and doesn't impede, accessibility for, mobility challenges and everything. But I think
Or completely cover the wall.
Or do some really crazy flashing lights that are just distracting from the aesthetics. Just real quick time check. I just want to go ahead and get through the Catalyst projects. We do have 10 minutes. I think we can talk about these, but I don't want to. There's so many pieces that you guys are talking about that go straight to the actual implementation strategy at the end. I want to make sure I give you guys my overview so you can ask me all the questions you need to. So the Catalyst projects, there's 10 of those that we've that have floated to the top. Of course, there's many more action items in the implementation strategy, because we don't want anyone to be bored and not have anything to do once this plan is adopted. So some of those 10 that floated to the top are continuous harbor walk, seafood market, or bazaar, local goods bazaar. We'll call it whatever it should be in the future. Family outdoor entertainment, perhaps to include a lot of mention of dog-friendly activities. Creative mixed-use project, which would include some ground floor activation and other uses up top. Or maybe it's horizontal mixed use. Ecotourism, cultural history, maritime museum, high-end hotel and conference center, waterfront and downtown streetscaping, and boatyard and haul-out facility. So those are very important from what we've heard from all of our stakeholders and community members to the future of downtown and waterfront. As far as the design guidelines, we've crafted design guidelines to help staff have a very good conversation with the development community, where they can point to and say, not like this, not like this, like this, or more of this, we love this, this is going really well, and this is what's not working well, and we would rather not see more of it. So it's just, it covers everything from site design to specifics such as wayfinding and signage, what you only get a first chance to make a second, you only get one chance to make a first impression. So when it comes to your signage, whether it be public or private, that is kind of how people perceive us when they pass through, but it also sets the tone for what we look at every day as we walk to our favorite coffee shop or bookstore. So anyhow, we cover topics and we break it down by downtown-specific guidelines, waterfront-specific guidelines, and we touch on all of these topics here: site design, buildings, outdoor dining, signage, lighting, plazas, connectivity, parking, loading, street furnishings, landscaping, and they're all, and so forth, but they're all specific to the issues that we've heard out of our conversations. And we did have a conversation up front with staff and people who do the plan checking. What are we struggling with at the counter every day? What are the problems that you see over and over again? So through those conversations, through what matters most to you, through preference surveys and just conversations with stakeholders and focus group members, we've kind of, this is how the design guidelines have sort of fleshed out, and it's probably our bigger section of the document. So I encourage you to send your comments, of course, to staff too, and we can collect those, but we look for input. And then finally, our implementation includes all of these things. It's basically a user-friendly action guide that says, here's what needs to happen, here's the priority and which should happen first, here's kind of who would be leading that charge and who could help them, support them, whether it's a multi-departmental or a chamber versus city or public-private partnership. And really, it's meant to give us marching orders as a community to do something starting today or tomorrow. Yeah.
I think we have to be careful using the term conference center. Because we were just at a conference last week, right? And the rooms that the conference was held in were probably 4 to 6 times the size of this building. You know what I'm saying? And the hotel had maybe 400 or 500 rooms in it. You know what I'm saying? So, maybe a hotel with meeting rooms or something like that. But, it has to be balanced. I mean, people.
Facilities.
Yeah.
People who go to a conference, number one, they want to stay in the same hotel that the conference is in. They want restaurants available in the hotel. They want a bar available. You want to go down to the bar and see the other guys from the conference and say hi, and so that it needs to be a core. You can't just put a meeting room in a hotel and say this is a conference center. It doesn't work that way.
So,
it won't be successful.
Yeah, I think also it's more than just that. I mean, if you want to, I have a very big family, and I don't have room in my house when they all the kids come. And I was looking just for a place to rent for a like a catered dinner, and it's really hard to find that here.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't have to be a big conference with 200 or 400 people, but it would be good to have a facility where, like an event venue of some kind.
Well, and I will tell you, this is something that we're struggling. A disproportionate amount of time went to finding all of the photos that might represent what this could look like from this document on page 2.29, because so many are off-putting and they're just not Morro Bay appropriate because they're not from here. So we're using examples that we think might help us have a common vocabulary to talk with developers or the community members about perhaps what this looks like. And this is, again, our interpretation of what we've heard. So we really would encourage you to look through and say, I hate the top right picture, or this one is so awesome. I wish they all looked like that, but maybe one story more or less.
One of the things I have a little problem with is just the high end. I mean, I think we could say we don't want another Motel 6 in town, although that serves a great purpose for a lot of people. But I think if it were, a multi-use, multi-purpose hotels, something that suggests, yes, it has a restaurant and maybe room service. Yes, it has
full
meeting
service,
rooms.
or
Yes, it could be used as a wedding venue. Something that suggests a little expansion. But the high end to me is not what we're about. We're a comfortable, casual.
Yeah.
Not that, and you can do high end here, but I think to put it out there that's what we're looking for. We only want the Ritz-Carlton in here. Sorry, I mean it just.
Well, I think a full-service hotel. I think that's an attractive term.
We can replace it with that if you guys comfortable with that.
That would be great. Take conference center out of there. Good point, Bob.
Because land doesn't mean anything, I don't think either. But full service means something to a hotel here.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
So at this point, it sounds like, Lorelei, you want us to review this entire document and feed comments to Bob and to...
I was hoping that we would have a lot of the comments kind of come from this, and I think I've gotten a lot so far. But if you do see things as you read through it more with a fine-tooth comb when you're getting ready for bed at night and having a nice glass of wine or whatever it is you do in the evening, because I know you guys don't have anything else going on. If there are things that strike you as, that should make change, now's the time. We'd like to do that before it's wrapped up to a final document. We want to spend the next couple weeks kind of firming it up. But if tonight was a great opportunity for us to hear what makes you either clench up because it's not worded properly or the image just isn't the right one for Morro Bay. But if you have any follow-up, that's great. But
I do have a lot of comments on the design guidelines.
Great.
As you would expect.
I thought you might. I thought you might. I'm glad to see them.
I'm not going to go through everything. So yeah, I'll send them.
Sure.
Great, perfect. Yeah, appreciate it.
Okay.
Anything in writing, especially things that strike a discordant note. Really interested in those, because likely if they're striking that with you, they're going to strike that with others.
Yeah.
I know we have Brown Act challenges, but I would love to hear what her ideas are on design guidelines. I mean, is there a way to share that? If she sent you something,
If she gives them to us, we can post them for you. And you can
lovely. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'd like to include that area. I'm not sure even what street it is, but it's right on the bluff where you've got all those storage units, like right near Carla's. The restaurant is great, and then right around there you have these sort of odd kind of houses with, like, they're all storage on the bottom and they can't be anything else, and then you can have like one bedroom houses on top. It's just this little sort of strange little area with mixed, I don't know what, but anyway, that seems like kind of an opportunity site also.
Yeah,
And,
our zoning.
you have a car repair place there, and Yeah, they're building 2 houses, but the area behind those houses, it's just a strange area, and maybe could be a little more cohesive or something. But it's right off the downtown. It's really convenient to everything. And
Can you circle it? Can I ask you?
No, she's talking about
Circle it?
next to
map?
Carlos, which would be further
no, it's right behind Carla's on.
Okay.
But isn't it
Okay.
out of the plan area or no?
Is it outside of
I
our?
don't think it's out of the plan area.
It'd be right here.
Yeah.
Oh, it is out of the
I
plan
thought it
area.
was just the- yeah. Because
Okay.
all this stuff.
Well,
Betty's-
so the houses are there, but I guess the houses are up here too. Okay, well, never mind then. I think maybe that's a comment more for Plan Morro Bay.
Yeah, a lot of this is.
It might be a guideline conversation too.
I know they're new houses, but just
Question.
It's actually the street right out the end if you go that way.
Yeah.
yeah, it's right near here.
So that'll be something that we can discuss in the zoning update, because that is
Okay,
the reason
okay.
you see all that storage is because it is the zoning requires that there be a commercial use present.
It just seems like an odd place to have storage where you have beautiful views and
Right.
really good
And that's the
access to
zoning.
everything, and yet the bottom has to be storage. It's just strange.
What exactly Project E, ecotourism?
Yeah,
I'm
just
not
what is that?
clear of what you had. I mean, we already have stand-up paddleboarding, we have kayaking, we have hiking, so what else did you have in mind?
It's funny that you ask. I've Googled many times. I've Googled the definition because you get off track. You're like, well, it means a lot of different things to different people. But I thought this was an interesting definition. I brought it up just in the back of my pocket because I thought we might talk about it a little bit. But one of the best definitions I've seen is ecotourism is a form of tourism involving visiting pristine, fragile, relatively undisturbed natural areas. This is our downtown and waterfront, so obviously there's a lot of man-made here, but bringing people to it and capitalizing on what we have, I thought that was interesting. Intended as a low-impact and often small-scale alternative to standard commercial tourism, mass tourism. That seemed very appropriate in definition for Morro Bay. It means responsible travel to natural areas, conserving the environment, improving the well-being of the local people. I like that too. Its purpose may be to educate the traveler, to provide funds for ecological conservation, to directly benefit the economic development and political empowerment of local communities, or to foster respect for different cultures and for human rights. So really, it's a very general idea. It's a concept, but we've put some physical pictures and images of families enjoying things like the natural environment, on a stand-up paddleboard, and we have a lot of that here, but I feel like this deserves a place in this plan after hearing from the community. I don't have a horse in this race, but I feel like after listening to your conversations, this needed to be translated into the document for the one reason of a lot of the land uses that we have that where we want to plan for tomorrow don't necessarily have a face, and we don't have a dialogue or a vernacular for them. So I thought this was really interesting, and I didn't want to lose sight of the fact that even though this is a 5 or 10 year plan, we should constantly be thinking about what this could mean to Morro Bay and what type of projects. And when we go get proposals over the counter as a city, we should be saying, how can you contribute to ecotourism? And the developer will say, well, I don't really know what that means. And you say, here, look at this really interesting definition and see what it means to you. And if you can help us do something interesting that can pencil and make Morro Bay even more unique, but keep its charm the way it is today. So it's ambiguous, and I don't like to put something like that in the plan, but I didn't want to lose it because I feel like while we do have a lot of things that are definitely ecotourism, I think more importantly, it's planning for the unknown and keeping it in here so that we can have a really interesting starting point for discussion with the development community, which is the purpose of this document.
It strikes me that the land use response to ecotourism is to restrict the use of the land use, to prohibit certain kinds of development.
Yes, it's like an alternative.
And to support the retention of what we naturally have, which is why people came here in the first place. So I think it is important. I don't know that it's a catalyst project.
Yeah, we've heard it so many times. We elevated it to that status because I think people like the idea and what it translates to being for Morro Bay.
And I agree completely. It's critical to me. But
maybe we need to refine the definition, or
it's more of a programming issue when you talk about ecotourism. Then it's an entrepreneur doing something that's compatible with retaining the natural values of the land.
To give some thought to how we can make that. Maybe it just goes in the action plan and the implementation strategy, and perhaps it doesn't have a place in the catalyst projects, but it's maybe it's an overarching thing that goes into our vision, if everybody agrees.
It seems like a vision.
It's a more of
Seems like a vision thing.
more of a
for
vision
sure.
statement.
It's alluded to that word's not used in the vision, but the ideas behind it are in the
Yeah.
vision, so maybe it can be added there.
Yeah.
It struck me as weird as a catalyst project too. I agree with all the notions behind it, and I think as many of those businesses, I mean, I think of ecotourism businesses too, and I feel like that should be a very big part of our economic development. And outdoor even recreation, which I realize is, sometimes compatible, sometimes not with conservation.
Yeah.
Is a huge market, right?
Yeah.
It's a huge developing, but it's, if you look
Countywide,
at
really.
yes, the county is focusing on that.
Yeah, when we talk about Morro Bay's role
I thought
is
it was a
that.
really important concept.
But
Not sure how that
would the oyster farm kind of qualify in terms of it's an economic driver? It does have an ecotourism aspect to it because people do go on tours and eat the oysters, and it's a gateway to the estuary, which is another huge asset.
Maybe that's a better, more relevant example that we should be using in the plan.
Yeah, it's exactly.
And it's kind of I'd like it to be flexible enough where it's a choose your own adventure, sort of
But
thing.
even like pick your own avocados is another example of ecotourism.
You should be
that-
writing this section. I like this.
There
This
you
is good.
No, those are good examples.
Yeah.
But we already have them. I mean, I was.
Yeah.
The question I
What's
was asking.
the next big thing?
What are you? I mean, there's an obvious project. There's an obvious catalyst project, but it's not in the downtown waterfront specific planning area.
So, for example, one of the action items in our implementation strategy is to do a. Let's see here. Where did I see it? I had it on the top of my head and tabbed in mine, but I think I gave my plan away.
Oh, yeah. There you
Organize.
go.
It just. It was something along the lines. Of. Oh, it was about a history walk or a cultural walk. And it's just one thing. I mean, it's not a development. It's not a form of development. You're right. It's a concept and an idea, but it's celebrating who we are, which we've heard so many times, and how important it is, and how easy could it be as part of our wayfinding program to have a plaque walk, or as we develop our sidewalks to have along the stops. Did you know that Morro Bay exports, or in 19 blah, 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 why, what is it that's so interesting? Did you know that oysters are, one of our, it's just some kind of way to continue to celebrate and support the fishing industry uniquely to Morro Bay. What are we? Who are we? What matters most? And what do we want people to know about us when they do come? And what would our residents not know about us that they should? So just, it's a concept. It's not necessarily a project or just a business. So I think we could probably work on that a little bit more.
Can I add just one nitpick? This is really
Of course, that's why
small,
we're here.
but The word eclectic drives me crazy.
Funky drives somebody crazy. Eclectic drives you crazy.
Well,
Give me a word.
Eclectic means anything goes, and I don't think we mean that really.
A hodgepodge.
Now, eclectic, when it just sort of emerged organically, and we look at it now and we say, oh, it's eclectic. We like it because it's not uniform, pre-planned development. But we don't mean you can put the Geary Museum on the street. It doesn't fit here.
Yeah.
Right? So.
Okay. Gosh. We took out quirky. We took out funky.
I have a whimsical.
Idiosyncratic.
Whimsical.
Scares me. I think of like big donut-shaped buildings and
Oh,
scariness
no.
when I think of, like,
Whimsical?
whimsical.
I guess that's the problem. It's in like the beauty is in the eye of the
No, they're-
author.
Creative.
Okay. Creative. Maybe it's creative.
Interesting.
Well, and I think it comes from
Unique.
the fact that it grew one piece at a time. It wasn't a planned development that all looks alike. But it can still have some design themes, which we'll get into in the neighborhood guidelines.
Okay.
I
Creative,
assume.
unique,
Yeah.
interesting,
Yeah.
not quirky, whimsical, eclectic.
Good luck with that.
Or funky. Yeah.
Diverse.
Yeah, diverse is good too. It doesn't have a weird
What's wrong with
connotation.
funky?
I don't know. I like funky.
They got shots out.
Morro Bay's got the funk. I've always since we were yeah.
We rolled it out.
Yeah, it's gonna sound-
People were giving a negative.
Soft pudding.
Okay, no funky. Hot funky was good.
Good. I appreciate all this.
Santa Barbara.
Yeah.
Combined with
Exactly.
chicken.
Funk zone. Yeah. No. So thank you. This has all been very helpful, and we look forward to any other comments that you have. So appreciate it.
I have one more item out of this. We have timing things in here that talk about, in the end, the implementation sections, short-term, mid-term, long-term. And then we also have for the catalyst items, to do them, by year 2017, 2018, 2019. The timing of that probably, as this thing moves forward, is a little bit out of whack. And I would like you to think, do you like it specific like that? Or would it be nice to use the short-term, mid-term, long-term, provide the definition, and just use it throughout the document?
I think the timing is good to have as a target. I think it's not binding necessarily. Is that?
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying is that we have it pretty specified in here, and I can see where we're not going to meet some of the things just because of where we're at right now, and we're already through a goal-setting process, that the council's adopted. It doesn't have some of these things in it. So, would it be better to have the short term and just have put that in the catalyst projects too? And that short term is 1 to 3 years, and then we can program those into our goals and objectives process to get them moving. Or do you really like to have the shooting for that 2018?
I would love to see better signage by the end of 2017. Boom, done. There are certain things, instead of short term, which could be 1 to 3 years, and then depending on, we'll take it from when we finish the general plan, which puts it another 5 years down the road.
Okay.
So I kind of like that, but I do understand that there are certain things that it makes more sense to say this is a long term. We can't put a date on it if it's 8 to 10 years down the road. But
okay, so it would be good if you could maybe take a look at both those sections, see what you think about the timing that's in there. And I'm not opposed to leaving dates in there. I'm probably just going to move them back a little bit just because we just finished the goal setting session for the next fiscal year and some of this stuff's not worked into it. Anyway, just like to get your input and your feel for it. I was seeing both of them in there and I thought, well, maybe if we just did them with one, then it was consistent. But because we're going to need to make some changes, I guess is my only point.
I like Susan's idea where this maybe short term you have some dates in there, but then your medium long term are a little more general like that.
But
that could work.
It might be useful to combine the timing with prioritization. So in other words, let's say you have a project that is going to take 10 years to complete, but it's high priority. That means it's going to take 10 years, but get to work on it now kind of thing. So maybe that combination would work.
Okay.
That's a good point.
We do that in the housing element quite a bit. So there's some examples in there.
That's true. Okay.
Start yesterday.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, so then we will move along to committee member closing comments. Jeff, did you want to?
Sure, I'll start. Lorelei, this is great, good meeting, I think, and the document I'm very happy with. I'm at a point where I'm feeling confident enough to actually go out to people and organize meetings in neighborhoods and talk to them about what we've been doing so far, which I think would be a good step for us to take. Is there some way to come up with a summary level version of this document that I could do or present during an outreach meeting with community members?
Yeah, I would say the PowerPoint in the packet covers all of the key pieces and the biggest highlights. I was doing it mostly for the people who weren't brought along on the journey as a Cliff Notes version because I knew you had the full version, but I think it covers the highlights and it's almost like a user's guide, like what you will see when you open it up. Look at these pieces and then go read it and you might feel like you have your bearings straight before you start.
So I'll use that.
Because some people are like, well, I don't see any actions in here because they're only on chapter 2.
Right,
so it's really helpful to kind of know what you're looking at before you sit down, and it might answer questions before they start.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I've mentioned this to you before. I'm happy to make copies for if you want hard copies.
That'd be great.
To go do the thing. So you let me know what you need. We'll make it happen.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Scott. I appreciate that. The other thing is we're behind schedule, the original schedule. Do you have any thoughts about getting back on schedule? I'm a big schedule guy. And
Yes, we're behind schedule. Some of that has to do with some things have just taken a little bit longer and kind of meshing everything together. Not a huge problem, and we're also been extended forward because we have grant funding that's associated with this. We were awarded a Coastal Commission grant in August, and literally last week we got the grant agreement. We can't do any work on that until we get the grant agreement in place so we can start drawing that down, so we couldn't do the work associated with it. That's going to push us into 2018.
Okay.
Well into it.
Right.
That's timing that's going to be changed. That's sort of just kind of the way it's going to have to be because we couldn't start the work on those things, and it affects pieces. It's like threads throughout the process. It affects general plan. It affects zoning. It affects the LCP. It affects all of it, and so there's a little. Sometimes our hands are tied. I mean, we wanted it to be faster. They weren't moving on it.
Okay.
we're a little stuck. Nothing we could have done about it.
Okay. And the last comment, I talked with Dr. Teft about this earlier, is some way to have study sessions or subcommittees or something to kind of have more detailed discussions about some of the projects. Maybe you can follow up on that. Is that something anyone's interested in? Or
I'm not sure, Jeff, I'm not sure how to organize that as sort of an ongoing activity. We talked this afternoon, and I hadn't really thought it through. I mean, certainly that's something we could do on an ad hoc basis. In other words, if there's something that needs to get accomplished, we could say, okay, four of you guys volunteer, get together and sit down and hash this out and bring it back to the group. Do you have a thought as to how that would work, or do you want me to think about it? Or
well, my thought was, and you're right, it might not be the right time in the process because this document I like a lot, and we can just turn comments back in on it. But at some point, I envision where we just need more time than what we have in this meeting to talk about these things more. And I always feel like there's lots of comments, but I don't always get a sense of closure on these things. So my thought was we could do study sessions, assign 3 people to studying 3 of the opportunity sites or whatever, and just coming back with comment that we may have gotten from the community, or just maybe some things that were missed. I don't know. That's just the thought I had. Yeah.
I wonder if that might be kind of a relevant process with the zoning stuff. Pull together a few people who are mostly focused on the business area zoning or residential zoning, or what do we do with the mixed use? I mean, that could be a really interesting way to sort of study up on that ahead of time with a few people in each area, and then be able to come back with more comprehensive thoughts.
I think this is probably going to be dependent on products that we're having you review throughout the process. I see where you're coming from, and I think that maybe it probably becomes more relevant as policies develop through this process. We've been doing a lot of background stuff, with the exception of the downtown water. But this is a full product that you have in front of you now for review, draft format. But we will have pieces of policy that are rolling out now as we start moving down the road a little bit further. We've been doing a lot of background stuff to this point, and that's kind of switching over. Now we're jumping into the zoning code. We're going to start that and getting input from you for those things. And so as products come back out of that for you to review, it may be worthwhile for you to do that, or it may not be necessary. It sort of depends on how it plays out. And what level of concern about what rises to the top. We don't know until you look at it for the first time, and we identify something that's an issue.
Right.
That might be the way we tackle it. I think certainly we should be open to those types of things and be flexible enough to, if there's interest, to go down that road.
But as we get into the general plan itself and then into the zoning ordinance, we're going to be dealing with much more specifics. I mean, there's going to be like 10 times more numbers than there have been so far. And maybe it would be useful at that point.
Like I said, especially if you find issues or you're unsure about things and you're like, all right, really sure we're at that, we need to look at that some more or whatever. I mean, there would be things that might rise out of that not maybe be appropriate process to follow. And I think we should just do as it comes up, work through it. I mean, I think it's good that you're willing to do that and willing to spend a little extra time. I think that's fantastic. We'll take more of your volunteer time. I'm not shy about that.
Scott, yeah, I agree with Jeff. It feels like, and we've talked about this before, I feel like a lot of this has been too compressed because of the urgency or the time constraints and the fact that we didn't really start till September of the first year we were appointed. If I'm hearing you correctly, and I think you mentioned this possibility, with the 200,000, will that decompress us a little bit? Will that allow us to breathe deeply and cover more of what, like Jeff and I getting at, so we can more thoroughly flesh out some of these things?
I think as we bring stuff
we'll be able to use that money for that.
That you want to spend some more time with, you just let us know, and we'll figure that out. Which is why, suggesting that maybe you meet in a different format or something, or us meet in a different format, more workshop oriented type thing for you. Just need to know that as it comes forward, so we can address that. But we do have limits. So ultimately, as it relates to Michael Baker, we have limited funds. We have a work scope that we have to adhere to, and are looking right now to increase some of that, to add some more meetings for you. Isn't that nice? You meet more. But that's because we are extending the process out. You know, we're going to be going longer now, and so it's likely that we will need to have more meetings. And so, you know, that's part of what we're looking at right now, and part of what is going to go into the budget process for council.
So we may end up, if I'm hearing you right, then we may be serving those 3 full years that we were meant to serve. In other words, we'll go into 18.
It's likely going to be longer than it originally was.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah. That's fine. I've never quibbled about the length of it. I just felt compressed. I felt too pushed to make decisions too quickly for the public. So
we see that.
Yeah.
We literally talked about it a little bit today.
And that's why when Jeff said we're behind schedule, so some of the schedule extension is making up for the amount that we've already gone a little bit over, and then it'll give us a little bit extra as well. Yeah.
I think we're going to, as this plays out and as the budgetary process plays out for the next coming budget year, we'll know more. And that'll tell us where we're going. It might be more meetings just like this. Maybe we should have more of them, and that's what it takes to get through it. Mm-hmm. If we don't have the money, then we need to look at other options. And the idea that you came up with is very likely one of the ways we allow us to dive in deeper. And maybe that's just with staff working with you a little bit there and taking that input and then providing that back to Michael Baker. You know, very specific chunks, though. So we're conveying information correctly in limited fashion.
That was my.
I mean, one of the areas. I mean, we've talked a lot about how when we get to specifics like the zoning ordinance, we're really going to have to look at different districts in Morro Bay and the same stand. You know, and part of that might be, you know, there might be a real need for people to go out and drive some of these streets and say, does this street really belong in District A or in District B? You know what I'm saying? That's legwork.
Makes sense. So you're getting no pushback from me on any of that. I mean, we're going to need different ways to deal with different situations, especially as we start developing the policy part of this. It's going to be more involved for you.
Rich.
I had 3 comments, but the first comment was to thank the new council members for being here. I thought that was great that they were here. As we talked about, you know, the bigger project, the marketplace and the with the public-private partnership, I've seen, and again, you frequently mention Pismo, and I can't help but go back to my roots in working in Escondido, but I see opportunities as I walk around town for more public-private partnerships than just the one we're talking about. And with this waterfront project, for example, let me just mention one. The current work being done at Rose's Landing, I'm sorry, the Hofbrau, and they're extending their outdoor seating and the walkway. And then if you go to the south of that is the galley. And so there's about maybe less than a 20-foot section that is now left out of connectivity that could have been there with the boardwalk. It would seem to me that, just again, my background in some of the capital projects, you get economy of scale if you could maybe include connectivity there as you're doing that project and work out a partnership with the private developer that's doing that work on Hofbrau and say, hey, while you're doing that, can we get this part done and have that contractor do it, and find the funds somewhere so that we could do that in a lot cheaper way of doing those. Not just look at these bigger projects that we're doing. I agree with that, but let's look at them on the smaller projects along the waterfront too, and see there's opportunity to share partnerships.
Yeah, I mean, you're actually directly on point. The part that you're not seeing here is part that's involved with the remainder, part of the agreement that lives with the remainder of the grant, and that's the looking at the public access component across the back. We don't have that right now because we couldn't start it yet because the grant's not done.
Okay.
It's just waiting here with
Yeah, so it'll actually identify all of those things.
Perfect.
And I think the city in the past was maybe not quite as even-handed as it could have been in requiring public access components. And now we're going to have documentation that says these are the things you're supposed to do and where you're supposed to do.
Good. But even then, even the ones they're supposed to do that the developer is liable for, I'm talking when you see, for example, coming through your department plans for something like that, and you go, well, maybe talk with Harbor or Public Works or whatever and say, Do we have anything near there that needs to be fixed at the same time? That we could
have those conversations.
Okay, good.
We've actually, Rich, we've even convinced developers at times to provide connections to publicly owned access along there at the street ends.
Good. And that's what I'm getting at. And just the final thing would be, you mentioned, I forgot the words you used, Lorelei, but about our focus as a GPAC to what we're doing, the importance of that. And I just want us to remember that it's really easy to be dissuaded with a $4 million shortfall and maybe changing the direction and tweaking things to kind of jump on that instead of focusing on the 40-year plan. And I think it's more important because, I mean, just in numbers, if you divide the $4 million shortfall by 40 years, that's $100,000 a year. I know that's crazy math. But anyway, what I'm saying is when you look at that way, it's a big deal. But the 40-year plan that people will live with and support and like and care for is what we're really charged to do here.
Yeah, it's like seeing the forest through the trees. It's one of those scenarios.
Yes.
It's really hard if we don't end up where we wanted to be because we didn't stick to our guns of, it's so, and the details get in the way every day. That's what staff do every single day. So it's really hard to change mindsets. And same with developers. They're worried about making something pencil. But if we stick to our guns and say, this is where we want to be, help us get there. I'm sorry that project won't help us get all the way there, but it'll take us for the next 10 years in a good direction. And when that, site has a higher and better value, maybe we'll look at that. So.
Kind of along the same vein, okay. Many of these documents that have been coming forward have been reviewed at joint Planning Commission City Council meetings. In this format, they do not get the same scrutiny that documents receive when they're referred to the Planning Commission at one of our regular meetings and then go on to the City Council. So I think at some point, as we actually start getting into writing the general plan and writing the zoning ordinance, we need to sort of revert back to that traditional method of reviewing documents so that the Planning Commission will see them, go through them sort of line by line and make recommendations to the council.
So I believe our zoning, the zoning component of this is scoped more like that.
I think so.
Forward, a general plan like that, we probably should just have some more conversations about it because, like I said, we have a limited amount of meetings moving forward.
Right, but however, I would say, I would just say, I believe, Scott, that the Planning Commission could simply take the document, read it, and probably, no offense, but I know that the amount of time we have from Michael Baker is limited. That we could probably have that conversation on our own.
Fair enough, and I think that's just something internally we need to talk about a little bit on our side of the table.
Yeah, but I mean, the joint meetings, it's like at the most 12 minutes per person, so it's not much time.
Also, part of the conversation we were having today.
Yeah.
We had our sort of our bi-weekly meetings every 2 weeks. Yeah, and that was one of the things that we talked about was that it's a fairly compressed amount of time, and we had to hurry through last time in the joint meeting, and this one's not necessarily going to be a lot different, and so we're looking at opportunities there to not do that as much.
I don't have anything else to add.
Okay, then comments from our Community Development Director or from Michael Baker?
We have another meeting on the 16th, and then we're going to have a joint meeting of the Planning Commission and City Council on the 28th. We have a couple of meetings coming up related to this.
Is it?
Yep. More of it. Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
Okay. And everything else to add? You guys?
And
Nope, thank you.
what's the agenda for the 16th? Generally, what's the topic?
We're going to introduce zoning. So Martha Miller, our sub-consultant from RRM, is going to be here. I know you're excited for the zoning.
We're chomping at the bit.
She'll be giving an overview of the scope and what we're going to do during that work, and then also it'll be actually an interview with all of you about what you already know you like and don't like about the zoning, and she'll also be meeting with other members of the community that day to do these what we call code user interviews. So sort of like the focus groups we did for the general plan, but very specific to using the zoning code and what do we want moving forward. So.
Is the meeting on the 28th with this group?
No, that's
I
a joint
didn't-
meeting of the planning
That's
commission.
plenty in the city council.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, just want to make sure. Yeah.
16th, though, is the next week.
Right.
Right here. So, yeah. 8 days, yes.
So then, if there's nothing else, we will adjourn to our next regularly scheduled meeting, which will be on March 16th, and that will be here at the Veterans Hall. Thank you very much.